Chapter 791. A conspiracy. Wu Dao Suing rushed to the highest boulder and shouted, "Those who want to survive, stop!" The female slaves who were frantically searching for food and fighting initially paid no attention. It wasn't until she brandished the red jade soft whip with a crack sound, leaving a resounding echo, that it whipped through the air and left a deep mark on the mountain rock. The female slaves were all stunned by the display of strength and authority. They were all people who had survived on the edge of life and death. They more or less had some survival skills, and they were people who would do anything to survive. Yet, they were all awed by Su Yingshi's authority. Although Su Yingshi's figure was slender, her face devoid of color, pale to the point of translucence, her words carried an unwavering forcefulness. Instead of fighting like this and only one person survives, why don't we work together and let everyone survive? You make it sound simple. There's only enough food in the forest for one person, and what about the wild beasts? How will we survive? Someone immediately countered. Yeah, you just want to be the lone survivor and let the rest of us die here. Those who had made it here were all selfish and fearless, driven solely by the desire to live. The forest's food may only sustain one person, but aren't there enough wild beasts in the forest for multiple people to share? If we hold out for 7 days, everyone can make it out alive. Continuing to fight is akin to living in purgatory. How do you intend to survive? Su Yingshi's questioning pierced straight into their souls. How to survive? These individuals, who had narrowly escaped death, had never been allowed to choose how to live. But now, Su Yingxue had presented them with that chance. Rongshang had endured a night of torment. When she awoke, her lips were already bruised from biting. As usual, she cleaned herself before returning to the bed. With a cold, otherworldly beauty, she declared, "I want to see Su Yingxue." The morning sunlight streamed in, illuminating the naked man on the bed. His muscular chest and smooth muscles exuded strength. Lazily reclining with his hands behind his head, he presented a captivating sight. His tone was lazy as he responded, "What's there to see about Su Yingxue?" Was Su Yingxue more appealing to him? Was her body more appealing to him? Rongshang had no interest in his body whatsoever. Each time such a situation arose, it was torture for her. She only wished for it to end, feeling nothing more. She left Chui Feng with a cold back. She stated, "Su Yingxue needs time to recover. If you want to train in a place like the back mountain, you should wait until she's better. Let her out first, and let me heal her." Tisk. The man sat up on the bed, still naked, with a few strands of hair falling across his chest. His lazy, sexy demeanor accompanied his low voice. "Since when did senior sister become so soft-hearted? When you threw me in, you weren't concerned about my injuries." At that time, he had lost an arm and was on the brink of death, far worse off than Su Yingxue. But Rongshang had never worried about him. However, when he survived and climbed out of the back mountain, she glanced at him coldly. "Consider yourself lucky." She was cold and merciless. Now, she was worried about Su Yingxue. "Senior sister, I'm jealous." He enveloped Rongshang in his arms, his naked body pressing against her, lazily nuzzling her neck. His heavy breath engulfed her. Rongshang sank into her memories, her heart freezing. That year, Chui Feng was thrown into the back mountain. To fulfill Wu Dao's training, if he didn't survive, Wu Dao would kill him. She couldn't save him, only watch helplessly. Every day he spent there was endless torment for her. Finally, she managed to endure and see him. But she feared that her tears would extinguish the fighting spirit he had cultivated so painstakingly. The will to survive. So she pretended to be cold, offering no comfort and saying those words to him. Rongshang closed her eyes, banishing irrelevant thoughts from her mind. "Chui Feng, stop joking. If she dies, our plan will fail. If we can't kill Wu Dao, we'll all die." Wu Dao would eventually realize that Chui Feng didn't possess the soul he desired. He was simply Chui Feng. Unlike Han Yuan, who obediently followed Wu Dao's orders, she had always desired to kill this person and end the world's evil. Just like her senior sister, Long Shuli. When Wu Dao realized that Bailing City wasn't completely under his control, she, who had transmigrated into Princess Bailing's body, would surely meet her end. Chapter 792. Pathless Conspiracy. Rong Sheng's fate would be the same as Long Shul's. Chu Yifeng's lips curled into an evil smile, resembling the most sinister demon from the depths of hell. If he found out, at most, he killed others. I helped him seize control of the world and secure your life. Keeping you imprisoned is perfectly justified. Chu Yifeng, how dare you? Rong Sheng's eyes gleamed with a coldness akin to sharp blades. Chu Yifeng kissed her lips and chuckled. You can't harm me now, senior sister. You're the only one I desire. It must be you. Why me? Rong Sheng gritted her teeth. There were countless women in the world, and in Yungue City, there were enough admirers of Chu Yifeng to encircle the city. Why lock only me up here? She sneered. Because I love you, senior sister. Chu Yifeng laughed coldly. The words sounded warm, but coming from him, they were desolate and bloodthirsty, like the words of a demon. Rong Sheng took a deep breath, bracing herself. After enduring Chu Yifeng's torment for so long, she had grown accustomed to his madness. Lunatic, she scoffed. Chu Yifeng wrapped his arm around her slender waist and shrugged. I'm just a lunatic who's crazy about you. Rong Sheng's name had long been etched in his heart. Unfortunately, she didn't believe him. Chu Yifeng shook his head, grabbed his cloak, and left. In the past, Rong Sheng would mock him, but now she didn't even bother. She was only worried about Su Yingshu's frail health, fearing she might not survive in the back mountains. But she couldn't leave the Silver Moon Pavilion, couldn't escape Chu Yifeng's gaze. After much hesitation, she descended underground. The underground was a vast storage room. It was also the Silver Moon Pavilion's secret network. Rong Sheng received intel from the network. On the 15th of December, the Great Qing Dynasty and Great Qi Dynasty went to war. Within 3 days, they launched a fierce assault, killing 8,000 enemies. However, on the 4th day, the 9th prince was defeated and trapped in Yong City. It wasn't hard to guess why the Great Qi Dynasty chose this time to start a war with the Great Qing Dynasty. With Chu Yihan's loss of Su Yingxue and his unstable state of mind, Han Yuan, under Wu Dao's orders, moved against him, seizing the perfect opportunity. After crippling Chu Yihan, it would be Belling City and Great Wei Dynasty's turn. Rong Sheng wrote a few secret letters, dispatched by the Silver Moon Pavilion's guards. Ahong had already reported her actions to Chu Yifeng. Chu Yifeng reclined on a soft couch, his face identical to Chu Yihan's, but far more devilish, showing no emotion. He spat out a date pit. Do as she says. Yes, master. Ahong had guessed Chu Yifeng's intentions and gave the orders, but he couldn't understand. Master, Princess Rong Sheng wants to kill the West Pavilion master. What are your thoughts? Chu Yifeng and Chu Yihan were twin brothers, and the 9th prince, the most powerful figure in the Great Qing Dynasty, had always been upright. This brother of his master, had never understood his intentions. Whether to kill Wu Dao or aid in evil, each decision was unpredictable. Chu Yifeng's female slaves fed him another date. He caressed one of their faces lazily. It depends on my mood. If I'm in a good mood, it'll help them. If not, whoever I want to die will die. And your brother? Ahong sweated. At least they're biological brothers. Would he just watch him die? Ahong thought. Chu Yifeng spat a date pit at Ahong, wrinkling his nose in disgust. Losing because of a woman is truly embarrassing. How embarrassing. Ahong kept his head low, not daring to let Chu Yifeng see his mouth twitching. Master, are you really in a position to say that about your brother, who's risking his life for Princess Sheng? Ahong couldn't help but think. 7 days later, in the back mountains of the Silver Moon Pavilion, Ahong came to inspect the situation. As expected, there was a strong smell of blood. Normally, he would find a mountain of corpses and bodies torn apart by wild beasts. But to his surprise, there was the smell of blood, and there were people. Many people. Behind Su Yingxue stood Ah Jing and 98 female slaves. They all stood behind Su Yingxue when they saw Ahong approaching. During these 7 days, Su Yingxue led them to hunt wild beasts and find food. They all survived safely. This outcome astonished Ahong, who hurried to report to his master. Chu Yifeng had 2 female slaves attending to him, massaging his shoulders and legs. When they heard Ahong's report, their beautiful eyes widened. She's quite capable, as expected of Chu Yihan's woman. All Hong cursed silently. Weren't you looking down on your brother who lost because of a woman just yesterday? Chu Yifeng, it's been 7 days. I want to go to the back mountains. Rongsheng entered and saw 2 beautiful female slaves beside Chu Yifeng. Disgust flickered in her eyes. Chu Yifeng noticed her disgust and felt suddenly better. He pushed away the female slaves beside him and embraced Rongsheng. Let's go. I'll accompany you to the back mountains. Suing Xue was waiting in the back mountains. If she guessed correctly, she should be able to meet the legendary East Pavilion master of the Silver Moon Pavilion now. He was also the one who saved her and threw her into the back mountains. In the past 7 days, her body had almost recovered thanks to the Medicine King Valley's healing. Therefore, when Chu Yifeng appeared in front of her, her heart skipped a beat. She rushed over and jumped onto him to hug him. Your Highness! She finally saw him again. How worried must he have been when she went missing on their wedding night? Ahong was dumbfounded by this sudden turn of events. Even Jing and the female slaves behind her were stunned. Sister Xue is very impressive. Chapter 793. Rongsheng is really amazing. 1. Not only could Su Yingxue bring them along to hunt wild beasts, but she could also dash over and embrace Chu Yifeng, who emitted such a sinister aura. Indeed, she was quite impressive. Chu Yifeng clicked his tongue. Don't you find yourself rather heavy? Could it be that his younger brother had devoted all his strength to hugging Su Yingxue? Su Yingxue turned her head in confusion. She cupped Chu Yifeng's face and gently touched his forehead. Your Highness, what's wrong? Normally, you would be displeased if I didn't embrace you. Chu Yifeng's lips curved into a faintly mocking arc. Is that so? His brother, always wearing a cold expression, had such an unknown side to him. Su Yingxue was on the verge of nodding in agreement, ready to respond with a resounding yes. When she didn't hug Chu Yihan would subtly release a low pressure, making her realize her lack of closeness to him. But now, seeing the mockery in Chu Yifeng's eyes, Su Yingxue immediately jumped down. She took 3 steps back and pointed warily at Chu Yifeng. You're not your Highness. Who are you? Chu Yifeng raised his lips. You've been hugging me for so long, and now you're just asking who I am? If your Highness found out, what would he think? For some reason, Su Yingxue felt that this person was very despicable. If your Highness finds out, he'll probably kill you first. Is that so? Chu Yifeng burst into laughter. Ignore him. Let me check on your condition. Rongsheng bypassed the somewhat crazed Chu Yifeng and walked up to Su Yingxue. Rongsheng reached out her hand, gesturing for her to place her hand in her palm. Su Yingxue was cautious of strangers, but the beautiful woman in white before her didn't trigger any sense of danger. She instinctively reached out her hand. Rongsheng placed 2 fingers on Su Yingxue's slender wrist and gently felt her pulse. Her fingers were slender and fair like a work of art meticulously crafted by the heavens. Slightly cool, yet radiating care. Su Yingxue couldn't help but ask, Do you know me? Rongsheng nodded gently. Yes. This was their first encounter, yet she had already heard about her and envisioned her appearance more than once. She bore an uncanny resemblance to her most admired senior sister, Long Shuli, a bright and determined young woman. After Rongsheng checked Su Yingxue's pulse, she was astounded to find her body in nearly pristine condition. Considering she had been completely drained of blood by her mentor, Wu Dao, surviving was already miraculous. But now, she was recovering so well? Yingxue, did your mother leave something for you? Curiosity flickered across Rongsheng's flawless visage. Su Yingxue nodded. Yes. She refrained from mentioning Medicine King Valley, yet she felt no need to conceal it from the woman before her. There was an undeniable sense of connection. Rongsheng nodded. That's not surprising. With access to your senior sister's medical laboratory, your recovery would be swift. Medical laboratory? Su Yingxue heard another unfamiliar term. She sensed it was related to her mother. This woman surely knew her mother. She could not wait to ask, but she was even more curious about, who is he? Why do you resemble your Highness so closely? The face that could make her mistake wasn't just a disguise, But in this world, who could resemble your highness so closely? Just as Chu Yifeng was about to tease her, Rong Shang cut in directly. He is the elder brother of the 9th prince, Chu Yifeng. Su Yingxue was shocked. Su Yingshue's eyes widened. Isn't he deceased? How could there be a resurrection? If you're not dead, why should I be? Chu Yifeng chuckled, his lips curling into a mocking smile. His mockery lent him an irresistible allure. Su Yingxue was convinced she belonged to Chu Yihan's lineage. Rong Shang intended to escort her back to the Silver Moon Pavilion and brief her on what lay ahead. Behind Su Yingxue, Alt Jing timidly called out, "Sister Yingxue." She was afraid that if Su Yingxue was taken away, they would be locked up here, forced to endure mutual slaughter just to survive. However, Su Yingxue held Rong Shang's hand and said, "Release them. Let them live their lives in peace." Rong Shang wasn't one to be ruthless or extinguish humanity, but she looked towards Chu Yifeng. "This is the domain of the East Pavilion Master. You should ask him." Following her gaze, Su Yingshue's eyes landed on Chu Yifeng. Chu Yifeng looked at her and smiled. Su Yingxue found it difficult to conceal her disdain. "He's the East Pavilion Master? Why do I feel like it's you?" Chu Yifeng exuded a strong aura on his own, but standing beside Rong Shang, he seemed somewhat weaker, almost as if he deferred to her authority. Chapter 794. Rong Shang is really amazing, too. Chu Yifeng heard this without getting angry. He toyed with the jade pendant at his waist and pursed his lips. "As the pavilion master, I could show leniency, but it would require senior sister's intercession to be effective." Senior sister was referring to Rong Shang. His unabashed admiration for Rong Shang was evident in his eyes. Su Yingxue struggled to comprehend how this guy became the East Pavilion Master of the Silver Moon Pavilion. Could it be just luck? He seemed utterly infatuated with Rong Shang. "Release them," Rong Shang said nonchalantly, paying no mind to Chu Yifeng. "Very well, Ah Hong. Release them and give each one 10 taels of silver." Chu Yifeng gestured grandly. He commanded with imperial authority despite the absence of a dragon throne. Ah Hong promptly organized the distribution of silver and released the captives. The sudden turn of events left Su Yingxue needing time to process, and the 98 female slaves behind her took a while to react, shedding tears of joy. When Ah Jing received the silver, she tearfully thanked Su Yingxue. "Sister Yingxue, thank you. Aren't you joining us?" Su Yingxue shook her head and gently touched Ah Jing's face. "I have other matters to attend to. Ah Jing, once you're out, you must live well." "Yes, Sister Yingxue, we'll make sure to live well and not disappoint you." As Ah Jing left, gratitude filled her eyes. Watching the 98 female slaves depart, Su Yingxue sighed. Surviving truly isn't easy. Those who are alive bear heavy responsibilities, like you and me. Rong Shang's eyes darkened. Suddenly, Su Yingxue felt a profound resonance with Rong Shang. Rong Shang brought her back to the Silver Moon Pavilion and candidly revealed that she too had transmigrated. To be precise, she was forcefully brought into this world by Wu Dao. Wu Dao was a top-tier medical doctor in the modern world and possessed a coveted medical laboratory. He hailed from a powerful family and was nearly perfect. In the modern world where civilization was open and technology was advanced, his ambition was extremely vast. He wanted to be the king, to become the ruler of the world. He felt that he could control a person's life and death by mastering the most cutting-edge and powerful medical science. Unfortunately, his idea could not be realized in modern times. Therefore, through a scientific experiment, he found this world in a parallel time and space and brought a few of his most proud students to transmigrate. Rong Shang, Long Shuli, and Han Yuan were among them. Rong Shang and Long Shuli initially believed that they had followed Wu Dao into an era rife with corruption. They desired change, healing, and the creation of an era belonging to them, one where they could establish medical humanities. However, they later discovered that the mentor who brought them there had given himself a name, Wu Dao. That wasn't his true intention. He was merely ambitious, seeking to conquer the era and dominate the world. He wanted to become the sole supreme ruler. He aimed to control all the people of this world. He established the Silver Moon Pavilion, commencing his ambitious journey. Initially, their disagreement made Wu Dao somewhat hesitant, but later, he directly targeted Long Shuli, using her fate as a warning to her and Han Yuan. He even sought to recruit more people to aid him in uniting the world. For the sake of the people of this world, Long Shuli caused Wu Dao to fall ill, temporarily halting his ambitions. Wu Dao has porphyria, preventing him from sunlight exposure. The conditions here hinder his self-treatment. He can only constantly replenish his hemoglobin, hence his search for a suitable blood source for extraction. Rong Shang elucidated all of Su Yingshu's queries. Su Yingshu swiftly processed these doubts in her mind. So, Wu Dao killed my mother? Su Yingshu's fists clenched tightly, emitting cracking sounds. Rong Shang nodded. You could say that. Your mother was defiled by your father, all orchestrated by Wu Dao. However, senior sister was resilient. Despite adversity, she would find a way through. Eventually, she bore Su Hao, becoming a marquis madam, and then you. This was something Rong Shang had never fully comprehended. Long Shuli being drugged and bearing Su Hao as happenstance. Yet, a few years later, she conceived Su Yingshu. How did Wu Dao kill my mother? Did he intend to kill me too back then? Su Yingshu's eyes reddened. Rong Shang shook his head. Much more cruel. Wu Dao spun a beautiful lie for Long Shuli, promising her that death would reunite her with the modern world. Long Shuli, weary of the world's turmoil and tired of battling Wu Dao, still harbored a modicum of trust in him. Thus, when she bore Su Yingshu, she passed away in peace. But Rong Shang knew Long Shuli could never return. Ultimately, she perished under Wu Dao's deceit. Wu Dao, you're heartless and yet aspire to rule the world? Su Yingshu's resolve hardened. Dream on. Even if it cost her life, Su Yingshu would kill him. For the sake of the people. All right, give it 2 more days. When the time is right, we'll eliminate Wu Dao together, Rong Shang reassured, gently holding her hand. Us? Su Yingshu stood up curiously and pointed at Chu Yifeng, who was lying on the soft couch and being served by a beautiful female slave. Could he have also transmigrated here? Hadn't Chu Yihan's real brother died long ago? Rong Sheng shook her head. He hasn't. Back then, to save Chu Yifeng's life, she had deliberately fabricated the fact that he was already dead. She also made Wu Dao think that he had successfully brought another senior brother over during the experiment, thus deceiving him. For so many years, she had been teaching Chu Yifeng how to not let Wu Dao find out. They had been hiding it from Wu Dao until now. Chapter 795. Sexy Chu Yifeng Su Yingshu sighed in admiration after hearing this. Aunt, you're impressive. You've managed to protect this madman and keep it a secret for so many years. This ability was probably not inferior to her mother's. Rong Shang's expression remained calm. Compared to senior sister, I'm not capable enough. If she could be as decisive as Long Shuli, she wouldn't have been trapped here by Chu Yifeng for the past few years. She could poison him at any time and implement her plan. Su Yingshu felt that Rong Shang was being too modest. Just as she was about to speak, the curtain was lifted. The man's sexy Adam's apple bobbed as he asked in a low voice, "What did you call her just now?" Su Yingshu recalled for a moment. Aunt. Rong Shang was a soul that had transmigrated. She was her mother's junior sister. In short, she was of the same generation as her mother. It was only right for her to call her aunt. However, Chu Yifeng's gaze made her feel pressured. Chu Yifeng's lips curled into a frivolous smile. You're not worthy enough to call her aunt. Su Yingshu suddenly realized how terrifying Chu Yifeng was. He was very good-looking when he smiled, but there was a 90% stubbornness and bloodlust in him. He was like a lunatic who had fallen into hell. Even someone as powerful as Rong Shang had been trapped for several years. Thinking of Chu Yifeng's cruel methods, Su Yingshu restrained herself a little. Sister Rong Shang, let's discuss the plan to deal with Wu Dao. Rong Shang's expression darkened. A hand on her waist was holding her down, making it difficult for her to breathe. As she panted, she glanced at the man coldly. Chu Yifeng, is senior sister uncomfortable because of me? Chu Yifeng lifted Rong Shang up and easily made her sit on his lap. His eyes seemed to be asking an innocent question. His hand had already reached into Rongsheng's clothes. Rongsheng's face turned red, and her voice trembled. Stop. Now. Let's get down to business. Moreover, Su Yingxue was still here. Su Yingxue had already turned away when the two of them became intimate. She cursed in her heart. How could Chu Yifeng be so different from your highness, even though they came from the same womb? Like a madman. No, he was just a lunatic. Chu Yifeng fondled Rongsheng for a while. Seeing that Rongsheng was blushing and panting, he finally let her go. He turned around and leaned on the soft couch, his face relaxed. The long hair that fell from his cheek was extremely sexy and seductive. Wu Dao is not a person without a weakness. He thought that after killing you, he would have no vulnerability. Little did he know that you were the key to victory. But now, Chu Yihan is the one who's going to be in trouble, he said faintly, his face indifferent, as if Chu Yihan was not his biological brother but a stranger. What's wrong with your highness? Is it the bloodthirst acting up? Su Yingxue's anxiety was obvious. She knew that if she went missing, Chu Yihan would go mad looking for her. If Wu Dao took this opportunity to harm him, it's not just the bloodthirst but also the double blow of defeat. He might not survive. A shadow passed over Chu Yifeng's eyes. I need to save your highness. Su Yingxue rushed out in a hurry. Chu Yifeng sneered. Su Yingxue couldn't get out. The area was strictly guarded. A Hong kindly reminded her, Miss Su, this is Master's Silver Moon Pavilion. Without his orders, no one can leave. Chapter 796. Unable to get out of Silver Moon Pavilion, I want to save your highness. You all. Su Yingxue tried to break through. Her body had recovered, and she held the red jade soft whip, even using poison. But in the end, she was still forced back to her original position. Rongsheng looked at her calmly, as if she had already expected this outcome, her brows furrowed. On the soft couch, Chu Yifeng was being served by female slaves. He looked at her leisurely. Don't you want to try escaping again? With your stamina, you can still go down another floor. Su Yingxue whipped at him. Chu Yifeng, I don't have time to waste with you. If anything happens to your highness, I won't let you off. So Hat, Chu Yifeng didn't seem to care at all, as if he was still joking with her. Your highness is your younger brother, and he is in danger now. As his elder brother, how can you not be anxious and not save him? Are you still his brother? Su Yingxue was still so angry that she wanted to hit someone. However, her whip was held in Chu Yifeng's hand. Anyone could tell that his martial arts were abnormally strong, on par with Chu Yihan. Chu Yifeng didn't show any signs of anxiety and told her, it's useless even if you're anxious now. You can't help him in his battle, and you can't appear in Wu Dao's sight. With such a casual remark, Chu Yifeng simply dismissed Su Yingxue. Miss Su, please come with me to rest. Master has prepared a room for you. A Hong walked to Su Yingxue's side and said politely, Chu Yihan was in danger, so how could Su Yingxue be willing to rest? You go back first, Rongsheng said, holding her hand. She glanced back. Don't fight him head-on and waste your energy. I'll let you know if there's any news about Chu Yihan. Su Yingxue's heart felt like it was being crushed by a huge rock. No matter how unwilling she was, she could not do anything. She could only bite her lip. All right, they'll wait for your news. She couldn't escape, so she could only leave temporarily. After she left, only Chu Yifeng and Rongsheng were left in the room. The Silver Moon Pavilion was magnificent, comparable to a palace. It would not be an exaggeration to say that Chu Yifeng was the emperor of Yungue City. The room was filled with incense. Rongsheng frowned and walked to Chu Yifeng's side. Chu Yihan was in danger. You sent someone to save him. Her tone was very certain. She had no evidence to prove this, but her understanding of Chu Yifeng made her feel certain. Chu Yifeng's eyes sparkled with a hint of a smile, his picturesque features becoming even more stunning. He pulled Rongsheng into his embrace and gently lifted her chin, pressing his lips against hers. As expected of my most beloved senior sister. Rongsheng avoided his kiss in disgust, but it made him even more unable to extricate himself. In the end, she was still pressed onto the bed by Chu Yifeng. Rongsheng once again felt that habits were a very scary thing. She used to be self-reliant and self-disciplined, so no matter what the situation was, she would never lose herself and was always so independent. Only then could she help Chu Yifeng become the East Pavilion master. But later, she was imprisoned and tortured by him. She had developed a habit. Some of the torture had become a habit, and the pain that followed had also become a habit. When Chu Yifeng pressed down on her and interlocked his fingers with hers, she habitually did not try to break free. Su Yingxue still fought with the people from the Silver Moon Pavilion for an entire night. She had rested for half the night and wanted to escape in the latter half of the night. However, the defense of the Silver Moon Pavilion had taught her a lesson. Chapter 797. Chu Yifeng is too thick-skinned. After a whole night of fighting, the last place she stood was still in her room. When Ahong got up and came to Su Yingxue's place, he was not surprised to see her guest room full of debris. He had a humble and polite smile on his face. "Miss Su, Master wants to bring you to see someone." After saying that, he walked in front and led the way. With such a commanding tone and way of doing things, Su Yingxue had no room to resist. She held the red jade soft whip in her hand and followed him. If she saw Chu Yifeng again, she would fight with him. Even if she couldn't tear his face apart, she'd make sure to knock out one of his teeth. How despicable. Su Yingxue was brought to the top floor. She remembered that the level of the Silver Moon Pavilion represented status. Of course, Chu Yifeng lived on the top floor, and so did Rongsheng. She was already prepared to fight Chu Yifeng, but Althong didn't bring her to Chu Yifeng's place. This was the room furthest away from Chu Yifeng, and it was the quietest yet elegant room. The rays of sunlight shone into the room, and it felt very warm just looking at it. The person who lived here must have an important place in Chu Yifeng's heart. Ahong did not open the door. Instead, he opened a corner of the window and let Su Yingxue peek inside. Su Yingxue looked over nonchalantly, but her eyes suddenly widened. "Your Highness." She couldn't control herself and was about to rush in when Ahong stopped her. "Miss Su, please don't get agitated. The 9th prince has taken Princess Rongsheng's medicine and is now sleeping peacefully. He hasn't slept for 7 days and 7 nights. If he doesn't sleep now, he won't be able to recover." Su Yingxue's heartache for Chu Yihan. "Your Highness, why did you become like this?" She had expected that when the war broke out, he would lead his troops out. Coupled with the shock of her disappearance, it was reasonable for Chu Yihan's bloodthirst to flare up. But he had not slept for 7 days and 7 nights. How could he endure this? The left side of Su Yingxue's chest was pinched hard by someone. It was so painful that she could hardly breathe. Ahong's tone was very calm. Because of the West Pavilion Master's scheme, the 9th prince's bloodthirst acted up on the night of his wedding. His heart was in chaos, and his imperial brother tried to kill him again. It was old General Su who tried his best to save the 9th prince's life. However, the Great Qi dynasty and the Great Shang dynasty quickly went to war, and the 9th prince had to lead his troops out. After several bitter battles, his bloodthirst had not been eliminated. He was trapped in the enemy's ambush and was unable to withstand the attack. Did Chu Yifeng save him? Su Yingxue looked through the window at the sleeping Chu Yihan and choked. Ahong nodded. "Yes, Master's men brought Miss Rongsheng's powerful tranquilizer and forced 9th prince to fall unconscious. A strong tranquilizer. Su Yingxue had read about it in a book. It was a medicine that she had yet to develop, but Rongsheng had it. She took a deep breath. When can I see His Highness? Master's original order was that you shouldn't see 9th prince before he recovers. Princess Rongsheng will be responsible for curing Zhuangye. Ahong said, "Why don't you let me treat him?" Su Yingxue bit her lip. "Because your medical skills can't compare to Rongsheng's." Chu Yifeng's mocking voice could be heard. "You." Su Yingxue's red jade soft whip swung out. "If you don't know medicine, then don't talk nonsense." Rongsheng said coldly beside him. "Oh." Chu Yifeng's expression was as if he was telling the truth. His shamelessness was beyond the reach of anyone. Chapter 798. She finally met Chu Yihan. Rongsheng explained to Su Yingxue, 9th prince's anger had attacked his heart, causing damage to various organs in his body to a certain extent. He needs an extremely quiet environment to recuperate and cannot be subjected to any heavy stimulation. I'm worried that if you see him now, it might lead to complications. So, I propose waiting for him to recover for a few days before revealing the truth to him. Do you have any objections? Rong Shang's voice remained very cold, like that of an otherworldly fairy, but Su Yingxue could discern the concern in her tone. She nodded in agreement. Thank you, sister. Rong Shang hummed in acknowledgement and fell silent thereafter. Though she wasn't dressed scantily, and her collar was intentionally pulled up slightly, Su Yingxue still caught a glimpse of the red marks on her body. As Chu Yifeng turned to leave, Su Yingxue silently cursed him, bastard. Torturing Rong Shang like this would surely lead to dire consequences. Chu Yifeng's hearing was extraordinary. Upon hearing Su Yingxue's curse, he turned around and hugged Rong Shang's waist. Su Yingxue is cursing me. Senior sister, aren't you going to reprimand her? Rong Shang didn't even spare him a glance and headed straight back to her room. She needed to quickly sense the fragrance inside the room. Chu Yifeng had poisoned her. If she stayed away for too long, she would perish outside. That was also why she couldn't escape and couldn't leave him. After Rong Shang returned to her room, she could only sit on the balcony, continuing to exude that cold beauty. Seeing Chu Yifeng smile, Ahong approached to seek instructions. Master, should we increase Princess Rong Shang's dosage? Chu Yifeng didn't hesitate to reply. Yes, increase it until she can't live without me for the rest of her life. Ahong nodded but sighed inwardly. Being loved by the master, I wonder if the princess, is it fortunate or unfortunate? Chu Yifeng doted on Rong Shang, and she was one of a kind. Once, Chu Yifeng slaughtered everyone in the kitchen because Rong Shang felt unwell after eating a dish. Yet, he poisoned Rong Shang daily, monopolizing her and not allowing her to leave his sight for even a second. Otherwise, he would rather destroy Rong Shang and let her die. With such intense and fervent emotions, ordinary people truly wouldn't be able to handle it. At the door of Chu Yihan's room, Su Yingxue, disguised as a servant, quietly pushed it open. She knew that Chu Yihan couldn't handle any provocations, so she wrapped herself tightly. She even put on makeup to conceal her original eyebrows and deliberately drew thick, long, straight eyebrows. To prevent Chu Yihan from recognizing her, she even took a dose of Saint Ruan's concocted poison to alter her voice. Carrying the sumptuous dishes, she placed them on the table for Chu Yihan. Approaching the screen, she spoke softly, Your Highness, please dine. There was no response for a long time. After waiting for a quarter of an hour, she finally heard the sound of footsteps. Su Yingxue could tell that his internal injuries were severe. His breathing wasn't as steady as usual. Each step he took felt like a weight on her heart. Her husband, Chu Yihan's divine-like handsome face was pale, devoid of blood. His stoic expression carried a sense of abstinence. However, he seemed somewhat dizzy. As he emerged from the screen, he reached out to steady himself. Su Yingxue immediately moved forward, wanting to grasp his wrist. Your Highness, be careful. Don't touch me. Chu Yihan's movements were swift as he pushed her away. His body swayed from her rejection, and he grabbed onto the screen to steady himself. Seeing his white-knuckled grip on the screen, Su Yingxue desperately wanted to stabilize him. However, Chu Yihan's gaze turned cold as he rebuked, Other than her, no one is allowed to approach me. Leave. Chapter 799. He forbids other women from touching him. Who is she? Why is she so domineering? Su Yingxue exclaimed, stomping her feet in frustration. She is my wife, Chu Yifeng responded. Su Yingxue was shocked by his response. Su Yingxue widened her eyes in astonishment. She was momentarily speechless. I didn't so domineering. I promised her that, apart from her, I would never have any contact with another woman in this world, Chu Yifeng explained. Despite Chu Yihan's evident coughing and unsteady steps, he adamantly refused Su Yingxue's assistance. Gritting her teeth, Su Yingxue felt a pang of bitterness. Do you care so much about what I say? It was just a jest. It was because Yi Zhanjin had coveted him that she had made that declaration, forbidding any woman from approaching her. But even in her absence today, he rejected even a simple act of support. Su Yingxue stealthily wiped away the tears in her eyes and approached him. She adopted a voice he had never heard before. It was merely a jest. Why take it so seriously? Princess Rongsheng, who attends to you, is also a woman. Doesn't she touch you? How could she not touch him when she needed to take his pulse, examine him, and administer medicine? Chu Yihan shook his head. She knows how to diagnose the pulse using the thread. Su Yingxue gasped. What about administering medicine? You are her patient, and your status is so noble. Do you intend to allow someone else to apply medicine to you? No need. Pavilion Master is here, Chu Yihan replied. He was still as cold as ever, his demeanor as placid as a deep well. Su Yingxue felt a stifling sensation in her chest. She desperately wanted to blurt out, Your Highness, can't you be less rigid? What difference did it make whether the doctor was male or female? And what distinction was there between male and female assistants? You leave, Chu Yihan ordered. His gaze fixed on the dining table, his tone unfriendly towards Su Yingxue. Su Yingxue recoiled. She wasn't ready to depart yet. She wanted to observe Chu Yihan a little longer. I'm here to serve your highness meal. They'll leave after your highness finishes dinner, she stated, attempting to approach Chu Yihan to attend to him. However, Chu Yihan's icy glare forced her to retreat. Su Yingxue's hands trembled, and she stepped back 2 paces. She had assumed that with her altered appearance and voice, Chu Yihan wouldn't recognize her, hence her lack of restraint. But Chu Yihan scrutinized her features. The sense of grievance in her eyes stirred something within him. His pallid lips moved. You are? Why did she resemble Su Yingxue so much when she appeared aggrieved? When he had visited the Silver Moon Pavilion, he had found it reduced to ashes, with only remnants of phoenix satin and traces of her blood remaining. Wu Dao openly told him during the battle that Su Yingxue was dead. He suffered a great shock, which led to his defeat as it is now. But now, the enigmatic woman in the Silver Moon Pavilion was evoking an inexplicable urge within him. He instinctively rose to his feet, feeling a tad dizzy. He steadied himself against the table, but Su Yingxue, seeing him on the verge of fainting, instinctively reached out to support him. How dare you touch my brother? Have you grown tired of living? A voice interjected, positioning a hand between Chu Yihan and Su Yingxue, causing her to tremble involuntarily. Recalling Rongsheng's instructions, Su Yingxue hastily withdrew her hand. Pavilion Master, spare me. She fled in haste, leaving Chu Yifeng to deal with the aftermath. Chu Yifeng watched Su Yingxue's departure, his lips curling into a cold smile. She ran off quite swiftly. Who was that serving girl just now? I want to see her. Chu Yihan wanted to chase after her, but Chu Yifeng discreetly held him back. Just a female slave. My Silver Moon Pavilion has thousands of them. If you want, I'll send you a batch tonight. Chapter 800. Send him a female slave at night. Chu Yihan shot him a sharp glance. I was asking about the female slave from just now. I was referring to the female slave. The one who attends to you daily is never the same person. There's no need to be fixated. But given your current condition, you might not be able to have a female slave. Let's change your dressing first, Chu Yifeng kindly advised, patting his shoulder. Chu Yihan pushed his hand away in disgust. Although he complied by lying on the bed, allowing Chu Yifeng to change his dressing, he remained unresponsive to Chu Yifeng's attempts at conversation. When Chu Yifeng asked if the wound hurt or if there was any sensation, he dismissed it all as nonsense. Chu Yifeng shook his head. You're still as uninteresting as ever. Even Rongsheng, who was usually reserved, could be forced to cry, but Chu Yihan remained impassive as if nothing could penetrate his demeanor. His bad taste was triggered. When he deliberately pressed on Chu Yihan's wound, Chu Yihan's cold and bloodthirsty voice was heard. I don't mind challenging you. With your current condition, how do you plan to challenge me? Chu Yifeng sneered mercilessly. Chu Yihan's hand was already clenched around the Qingfeng sword. Chu Yifeng raised his hands in surrender. Fine, you win. I haven't even considered taking your life yet. Take care of yourself. Ah Hong, listening from outside, clicked his tongue in a sigh. Those familiar with you might mistake you for brothers, while those unaware would assume you're mortal enemies. Even applying the medicine, he could sense the eager sword energy of Chu Yihan's Qingfeng sword. Once dressed, Chu Yihan's lingering doubts sprouted like a seed. I want that female slave. After washing his hands, Chu Yifeng wore a teasing smile. You've just lost your new wife, and you're already in a hurry? Aren't you afraid of your deceased princess consort finding out and feeling heartbroken? Su Yingxue, eavesdropping outside, wished she could tear Chu Yifeng apart. This despicable person always twisted Chu Yihan's intentions. Chu Yihan was so upright. How could he be in such a rush? Seemingly accustomed to Chu Yifeng's perverse amusement, Chu Yihan regarded him with even more disdain. After the disdain came a simple, direct assertion. I want that female slave. By the time he repeated it for the third time, Chu Yifeng had to confront the sword energy of the Qingfeng sword. Chu Yifeng had intended to say more, but he was momentarily blinded by the brilliance of the Qingfeng sword. He shrugged as if conceding. All right, you can have her. I wouldn't be so stingy with you. Just take care of yourself. Rongsheng won't be available to save you tonight. Oomph. Chu Yihan's cold mockery spared no mercy. Chu Yifeng shook his head. As he walked out of Chu Yihan's room, he sighed in resignation. As the pavilion master, I've never been able to handle this younger brother of mine. If he wants a female slave, how could I refuse? With a seductive stride, he returned to his quarters. Su Yingxue threw punches at him from behind. Scoundrel! Lunatic! Deliberately tarnishing your highness' name. It was obvious that your highness wanted her. Certainly not any other female slave. Humph! Su Yingxue thought, venting her frustration, then remembered Chu Yifeng's words. He had promised Chu Yihan the female slave. Did this mean she would have to? No. Rongsheng had said that Chu Yihan couldn't see her yet, or else he wouldn't be able to bear it. When Ah Hong found Su Yingxue, he said, the pavilion master ordered that a female slave must be sent to the 9th prince's room tonight. Miss Su, are you going? Or should I send someone else? Of course I can't go. Su Yingxue gritted her teeth in frustration. If she could see Chu Yihan, would she need to dress up like this? But to let someone else go, Su Yingxue's heart ached a little. Chapter 801. He's jealous of anything when Su Yingxue asked Rongsheng about it. Rongsheng immediately decided and said, send another female slave to the 9th prince's room. At the same time, she gripped Su Yingxue's hand firmly. No matter what, you can't reveal your true identity to him in the next few days. Otherwise, the treatment plan I gave him will be wasted. Su Yingxue's heart sank. She wasn't jealous that another female slave was going to Chu Yihan's room instead of her. It wasn't because of jealousy. She simply couldn't bear the thought of anyone else having this opportunity with Chu Yihan. But her unease was calmed by Rongsheng's reassuring presence. Rongsheng agreed and took her to a spot where they could observe Chu Yihan's door. They could catch a glimpse of him when he opened it. Perhaps Chu Yihan wouldn't step out, but at least Su Yingxue could see him for a moment. Gratefully, Su Yingxue looked at Rongsheng. Thank you, sister. Rongsheng nodded, feeling somewhat strange. Long Shuli was her senior, and although she had transmigrated into the body of Princess Bailing, who was in her 20s, Su Yingxue should technically be her junior. Yet, she kept calling her sister. Su Yingxue also sensed her discomfort and whispered softly in her ear, it's just a form of address, don't worry too much about it. In my heart, you are as formidable as my own mother. Rongsheng objectively responded, there's still a big gap between me and senior sister. But as for the title, it's really not worth worrying about. Whether she called her aunt or sister, she would protect Su Yingxue like her own daughter. Outside the screen, Chu Yifeng lounged on the soft couch, attended to by a fragrant woman. Despite the luxury, his brow was furrowed in thought. Ah Hong, who had been with him for years, knew that his master's moods were often tied to Rongsheng. His current discontent likely stemmed from Rongsheng's closeness to Su Yingxue. Their master got jealous over anything involving Princess Rongsheng. No matter male or female, none were rejected. But Rongshang's naturally aloof demeanor meant she didn't get close to anyone, except for Su Yingxue, who was an exception. So, Chu Yifeng's desperate jealousy made sense to Ahong. Master, should we pick a beautiful slave to send to the 9th princess tonight? Althong suggested. A female slave fed Chu Yifeng a peeled grape, urging, Pavilion Master, open up. Chu Yifeng ate the grape without even glancing at the female servant. With his hands behind his head, he raised an eyebrow. I'll personally go to pick. When it came to choosing women for his brother, his taste wouldn't falter. In the evening, Rongshang brought Su Yingxue to sit opposite Chu Yahan's room, where they could observe the situation at Chu Yahan's door through a small gap. The mere thought of a female slave appearing in Chu Yahan's room made Su Yingxue want to kill Chu Yifeng. It was all his fault. If he chose a pretty girl, she would have a grudge with Chu Yifeng. Chu Yifeng didn't care at all. He even personally escorted the female slave to Chu Yahan's door. When Chu Yihan opened the door and saw Chu Yifeng, he furrowed his brows slightly. His gaze fell on the female slave behind Chu Yifeng, who was dressed in a peach-pink fairy dress and had her face covered with a veil, making it hard to see clearly. Chu Yihan had no choice but to open the door and let them both in. As soon as Chu Yifeng entered, he teased the female slave bee tugging at a strand of her hair and chuckled softly. The pavilion master's brother specifically requested you. Go and serve him? Chapter 802. Chu Yihan was so angry that he vomited blood. He deliberately maneuvered behind the female servant and nonchalantly kicked the slightly ajar door open. Outside, as long as Rongshang and Su Yingxue's eyes were functional, they could witness the female servant cozying up to Chu Yihan, lifting the medicine bowl and offering it to his lips. Su Yingxue's fists clenched tightly as she uttered each syllable with biting intensity. Chu Yifeng. This scoundrel. It was one thing for him to purposefully send a woman to Chu Yihan, but to allow them to get so intimate. She didn't want Chu Yihan to drink that medicine, but for the sake of his health, if she were there, she would have to convince Chu Yihan to take it. Both Rongshang and Su Yingxue observed clearly that Chu Yihan didn't immediately drink the medicine. Lip-reading, Chu Yihan said, Remove the veil. The female servant appeared troubled. Her gaze shifted to Chu Yifeng. Chu Yihan lifted a lock of hair with his index finger and caressed it gently. He looked sexy and seductive. They're all women. The ones I choose for you won't be lacking in beauty. Why do you need to pry into her identity? Not only does this medicine heal, but it also offers one a night of forgetfulness, so you don't have to be so reserved. On the other side, Su Yingxue exploded in rage. She kicked the table hard. Chu Yifeng is insane. He dares to give your highness this medicine. Isn't he going to take his life? Chu Yihan had yet to recover from his serious injuries, yet he was still asking him to forget about it. Chu Yifeng, you are a lunatic. Su Yingxue silently cursed him. Rongsheng pursed his lips and said coldly, Chu Yifeng has boundaries. While the medicine might induce forgetfulness, it won't kill 9th prince. But it had to be acknowledged, this was Chu Yifeng's depravity. Truly despicable. Chu Yihan remained unmoved, his eyes chillingly void. Remove the veil. His aura exuded an irresistible imperial dominance, causing the female servants to tremble in fear. Even the medicine bowl in her hands began to shake. The tearful look in her eyes bore a striking resemblance to Su Yingxue. Chu Yihan's heart raced uncontrollably. Chu Yifeng rested his chin on one hand and looked like he was waiting for a good show. Chu Yihan took a deep breath and said in a cold voice, If I have to do it myself, do you know what will happen to you if you're not the person I want? The female servant trembled as she presented him with the medicine bowl. Please take the medicine first, Your Highness. Then I will unveil. Chu Yihan's heart raced slightly. Her voice sounded like hers. Even the way she worried about him and fluttered her eyelashes was identical. Chu Yihan gulped down the medicine and reached for her veil with trembling hands. As he lifted it, his distinct eyelashes quivered slightly. Yingxue. He knew she'd be okay. Your Highness. Su Yingxue's fingernails dug into her palm, drawing blood. Yet she heard a loud thud from the other side. followed by a woman's scream. Chu Yihan's enraged bellow echoed. She's not Shu. I never claimed she was your Suing Shue. Chu Yifeng's laughter was devoid of emotion. Chu Yifeng. Chu Yihan's roar was icy. His blood surged uncontrollably, his chest bloating. A surge of blood threatening to burst out and rend him apart. Puff! He spat out a mouthful of blood and collapsed to the ground. Your Highness! Suing Shue couldn't contain herself and rushed out of the room. She lifted Chu Yihan and forced a heart protection pill into his mouth, urging him to swallow. Her tears fell, trembling. Your Highness, you'll be fine. Chapter 803. He's a devil. Suing Shue would save him. He would be fine. If you don't give him the medicine, he might wake up faster. Chu Yifeng scoffed. Chu Yifeng, do you even deserve to be called his brother? You're not his family. You're clearly someone who wants to harm him. Suing Shue shouted at Chu Yifeng, her red jade soft whip no longer restrained. Rongsheng approached Chu Yihan. She wrapped a handkerchief around his wrist to take his pulse and check his condition. His expression eased. Don't worry. He's vomited out the blood clot in his chest. With the medicine, he'll recover faster. Suing Shue couldn't believe it. When she took Chu Yihan's pulse, she found Rongsheng's words to be true. She turned to Chu Yifeng, puzzled. Did you purposely treat your highness like this just to make him vomit out the blood clot? Heh. Chu Yifeng sneered before leaving. Suing Shue helped Chu Yihan back to bed. His pale face tugged at her heartstrings. She lay beside him, reluctant to let go of his hand. Rongsheng suggested, You're good at acupuncture. If you give him acupuncture now, he'll recover faster. Suing Shue nodded and retrieved her set of silver needles from the Medicine King Valley. After applying the needles to Chu Yihan, she heard his breathing become much more even. After they finished, Rongsheng escorted her back to his room. Along the way, she took the initiative to speak. Chu Yifeng is cruel and vile, but he would never harm his brother. He's his only family in this world. In the modern world, her parents divorced and separated early, so she had no concept of kinship from a young age, hence her indifference. However, she knew that Chu Yifeng was different. He loved his mother and brother dearly. Even though they were miles apart, he never stopped caring for Chu Yihan. Every time Chu Yihan fought, he was there. When Chu Yihan's bloodthirst acted up, it was Chu Yifeng who held the Qingfeng sword and killed his enemies for him. Suing Shue was flustered and anxious just now. She kept thinking that if she killed Chu Yifeng, Chu Yihan would not blame her. But hearing Rongsheng's words, her voice was exceptionally cold, like the fairy dew of the Jade Lake. It was so cold that it was unattainable, but it carried a comforting force. Thinking back, Chu Yifeng's method was indeed a little vile. It made her feel uncomfortable, and Chu Yihan felt uncomfortable. But in the end, Chu Yihan vomited out the blood clots, and she could even personally administer acupuncture on Chu Yihan to make him recover faster. This outcome was unexpectedly good. Sister, do you know Chu Yifeng well? Suing Shue asked curiously.
Yes.
Rongsheng nodded lightly. She saved Chu Yifeng, taught him, and even Rongsheng had been entangled with him day and night, so she naturally understood his temperament. Sister, it must be tough being with Chu Yifeng. He's so vile that he can kill anyone without even being noticed by others, Suing Shue remarked. She recalled his actions today. He could have planned everything silently, but if he wanted to kill someone, he could do it without a sound. They might even miss him. For example, the female slave that he had brought to Chu Yihan's place just now. From the expression of the female slave, she was infatuated with Chu Yifeng and not Chu Yihan. Rongsheng halted. There was no emotion on her cold face. I'm not with him. I'll never be with him in this life. Chapter 804. Come for Suing Shue. All she wanted was to rid herself of Chu Yifeng as quickly as possible. To leave this devil's den called the Silver Moon Pavilion. She could shine brightly in this world like Long Shuli. Every word Rongsheng said fell into Chu Yifeng's ears. He seemed to have grown accustomed to Rongsheng's cold words. Whenever he heard them, he would always sneer in disdain. Rongsheng, If you want to leave me in this life, you have to die. When Chui Han woke up at night, he felt much more relaxed. His chest was no longer aching, and his blocked meridians were much more relaxed. Other than having severe internal injuries and needing time to recuperate, he knew that his life was no longer in danger. There was steaming medicine on the table. He picked it up and drank it. He opened the door and told the person guarding the door that he wanted to see Chui Feng. The person outside the door said, "The pavilion master advises you to rest well." Chui Han ignored him and walked straight to Chui Feng. "Your Highness, the pavilion master has instructed that you cannot leave the room." These words might be useful to others, but they were useless to Chui Han. He went straight to Chui Feng's place. He wanted to find out who the person who performed acupuncture on him yesterday was. Pushing open Chui Feng's door, a flirtatious voice came from inside. After the man's low growl, there was a dull silence. The aura floating in the air made Chui Han frown. He turned around and left. Ah Hong saw Chui Han standing at the door with a signature smile on his face. "Ninth Prince, please wait a moment." He brought some people with him and carried hot water and some bathing utensils in. Chui Han stood outside the door for a moment before he heard Chui Feng's lazy and sexy voice coming from inside. "You're already here. What are you still standing outside for?" Chui Han's eyes darkened. After confirming that there was no woman's aura in the room, he stepped in. On the soft couch, Chui Feng was casually wearing a coat, revealing his smooth skin and tightly muscled chest. He was half leaning and half lying, looking like a lazy but sexy man. He raised his eyes and looked at Chui Han. "Are you all right?" As soon as he finished speaking, a delicate woman fed him something. In front of Chui Han, Chui Feng didn't feel embarrassed. He ate it and even looked at the female slave with affection. The female slave's heart rippled. "Pavilion master." This call made one's heart melt. Chui Feng was just about to flirt with her when Chui Han said coldly, "Get lost." Chui Feng was naturally not intimidated by his intimidation. Instead, the female slave burst into tears. She looked up at Chui Han as if she had seen the Grim Reaper. She quickly covered her face and ran away crying. Chui Feng felt a little regretful. He pointed at Chui Han and said, "You're going to be alone for the rest of your life. How can there be a woman who likes you?" The corners of Chui Han's mouth curled up into a sneer. "I'm already married. You're the lonely one." "Oh, you're flaunting yourself just because your wounds have healed?" The princess died on the night of the wedding. It would have been better not to marry at all. Chui Feng retorted mercilessly. Outside the door, Suing Xue had just come to look for Rongsheng. When she heard this, she clenched her fists so hard that they cracked. "Chui Feng, just you wait. Sooner or later, they'll chop off your head." He was bullying Chui Han again, that heartless brother. Besides, she was alive and well. "She's not dead." Chui Han's tone was serious. "She was the one who gave me acupuncture last night." He was very sure that he had not seen Suing Xue, but he had such a strong feeling in his heart. This pavilion master has many famous doctors. It's not that they don't know how to do small things like acupuncture. They can help you. No, no. Chui Han and Rongsheng said in unison. They were expressionless, but their words were consistent. Ah Hong lowered his head. These two masters were not to be trifled with. He should continue to suffer. Once Ah Hong left, Rongsheng put away the needle in her hand. She was cold and indifferent to everyone. Chui Han wouldn't have invited Rongsheng if he didn't have doubts. "Is the person who gave me the acupuncture okay?" Chui Han's eyes softened at the mention of her. "She's fine," Rongsheng replied lightly. The two of them only said one sentence before Rongsheng left. She did not return to Chui Feng's place, but went to the back mountain. Other than purgatory, the other side was a beautiful scenery. The sun slowly set, and the water met the sky in a line. The sparkling waves rippled beautifully on the water. Chapter 806. Crazy Monopolization. Rongsheng, had just arrived when a pair of iron-like hands shackled her from behind. They forcefully pulled her into an embrace, pressing her down tightly, as if trying to meld her into their body. Rongshang was used to his rough treatment. She wouldn't cry or beg for mercy. It wasn't until Chu Yifeng's hand pressed down on her, leaving her gasping for air, that she struggled to speak. Chu Yifeng, if you want to kill me, just do it. You don't have to torture me like this. Day by day, he tormented her. Chu Yifeng was slightly stunned, and then a trace of wickedness seeped into his eyes, like an evil emperor. I won't kill you. His hand coiled around Rongshang's neck like a giant python, slowly tightening and forcing her to breathe. I will only trap you, imprison you, and bind you to my side. Even in death, your ashes will sleep in my arms. Chu Yifeng. There was a hint of madness in Rongshang's eyes. She struggled to break free from his grip. Why? Why are you doing this to me? They were supposed to be the closest of people. Chu Yifeng was the first person she met when she came to this world. Back then, his innocent gaze had touched the bottom of her heart. But later, he had become a demon, intent on driving her mad. Wiry. A cold smile appeared on Chu Yifeng's lips. Senior sister, you are like a fairy who accidentally fell into the mortal world. What I enjoy is turning a fairy into an ordinary person, into a crazy woman. Just like him, driven mad by love. He wanted to possess her completely. As long as she didn't care about him, he would torment her mercilessly. Bit by bit, he crushed her aloof and otherworldly aura. Rongshang stopped struggling. She didn't have the strength to fight Chu Yifeng. She was used to being brought back by him, sinking and suffering. She spent her nights in purgatory. At night, the silver moon hung high, illuminating the earth as white as a sheet. Su Yingxue wore a veil and carried a needle kit to Chu Yihan's room. That night, she had been informed by Rongshang's men that Chu Yihan wouldn't wake up after taking the medicine. She could pretend to be Rongshang and apply acupuncture to Chu Yihan. She quietly entered Chu Yihan's room and approached his bedside. The man's handsome face looked even more striking under the moonlight. Su Yingxue affectionately caressed his face. Her hand felt the warmth. Your Highness, that day, she had been controlled by Wu Dao, and her blood was drained. She wondered how upset Chu Yihan had been when he found out. He must have been deeply affected, which was why he was like this. Su Yingxue spread out the silver needles and undid Chu Yihan's clothes. The needles fell gently, afraid of disturbing him. She didn't notice that Chu Yihan's fingers moved under the moonlight. He wasn't asleep. When she came in, he was already awake. He just wasn't sure if it was her. When she caressed his face just now, he was still dazed. When the words, Your Highness, came from her mouth, he no longer doubted. Other than her, no one else in the world could call him that. After Su Yingxue finished the acupuncture, Chu Yihan was still lying there motionless. Su Yingxue leaned over him, her eyes filled with longing. Your Highness, you've always been the most cooperative. She had encountered all kinds of disobedient patients, but Chu Yihan was the only one who obeyed her unconditionally. She stood up to leave, but her hand was suddenly pulled back, and she crashed into Chu Yihan's arms. The man's voice was low and hoarse. How can I not cooperate with the princess consort? He would listen to whatever she said. Your Highness? Su Yingxue jumped up in panic. In her haste, her veil fell off, revealing her face. Chapter 807. Ziwei wants to die with her. She hurriedly covered her face with her sleeve and purposely pinched her voice, screaming, Your Highness, you have the wrong person. I am not your princess consort. Am leaving now. Chu Yihan slowly rose and pulled her hand down, his gaze obsessed. If you're not, then where is my princess consort? Your Highness. Tears immediately streamed down Su Yingxue's face. She threw herself into Chu Yihan's arms, choking up a bit. Hearing Chu Yihan's heartbeat, she felt that everything she had gone through these days was worth it. At least she could return to his side. Oh no. Your Highness, are your internal injuries okay? Has your bloodthirst acted up? Does your chest hurt? Su Yingxue suddenly realized she shouldn't let him know yet. She was afraid that his blood would surge, causing his bloodthirst to act up again and harm himself. Chu Yihan gently pinched her face. After expelling the clotted blood, the bloodthirst will not act up again, and with your 2 acupuncture treatments, I am much better. That's good. Su Yingxue breathed a sigh of relief. She suddenly thought, wait, if you're not going to fall ill again, why did Chu Yifeng forbid me from seeing you? That man was annoying. He didn't let you come, but didn't you still come? Chu Yihan's lips curved slightly. That's right, I wouldn't listen to him anyway. But Su Yingxue was puzzled when suddenly, a thought connected everything in her mind, bringing back the seriously injured Chu Yihan, claiming his bloodthirst would prevent him from getting overly emotional, then deceiving them both by sending a female slave who looked like her to Chu Yihan, making him so angry he spat blood, thus creating an opportunity for her to sneak to Chu Yihan's side. This is all his scheme. She suddenly realized. Chu Yifeng had been playing with her and Chu Yihan. Su Yingxue's face puffed up with anger. Your Highness, your brother is so wicked. Why couldn't he just let me and Rongsheng treat you properly? Why go to such lengths, making you so angry that you spit blood? Although the result was good, the process was very torturous. And this wasn't something a normal person would come up with. What kind of monster was Chu Yifeng? Chu Yihan didn't seem surprised. You can just ignore him. Chu Yifeng's way of doing things was always different from his. They would never interfere with each other unless it crossed a line. For example, if Chu Yifeng used Su Yingxue to make fun of him, he would ensure he knew the consequences. He pulled Su Yingxue into his arms, and they lay on the bed, sharing their deepest feelings. That day, I was overjoyed to enter the bridal chamber, but you weren't there. Not being able to find you was the most disheartening moment of my life. Chu Yihan gently squeezed Su Yingxue's soft white fingers, a look of desolation in his eyes. Su Yingxue's disappearance was the greatest punishment from the heavens for him. When he went to the Silver Moon Pavilion, it was already engulfed in flames. He rushed in without a second thought, expecting to see Su Yingxue, but he only saw Ziwei, burned by the fire. He clung tightly to Su Yingxue's wedding dress, standing in the sea of fire. Even though the flames had already reached him, burning him into a human torch, he didn't move. He preferred to endure the agony of being burned alive. He said he smelled Su Yingxue's blood and believed she had died there. He stood in the spot with Su Yingxue's blood, determined to accompany her in death. Ziwei lost his soul, and he went mad. He crazily sealed off Jiangdu City, searching for any trace of Silver Moon Pavilion's people, but Wu Dao and Hong Lian had disappeared quickly. Chapter 808. Warmth from body to heart, everything was premeditated. Even though he found out that it was Yi Zhanjin who stabbed Su Yingxue, causing her to be controlled by Wu Dao. In a fit of anger, he killed Yi Zhanjin and threw Marquis Changxin into prison. But how could this be compared to Su Yingxue? Even if he executed the entire household of Marquis Changxin, he wouldn't be able to get back a single strand of Su Yingxue's hair. Did your Highness execute the entire household of Marquis Changxin? Su Yingxue was shocked. Weren't Su Aoqing and Yi Lingbai both implicated by Yi Zhenjin? How innocent they were. Chu Yihan shook his head and said in a low voice, Your grandfather pleaded for mercy, the rest were spared. At that time, if not for Su Qingji stopping him, no one could have saved the household of Marquis Changxin. He remembered that when he was crazed, Su Miaoyan shouted in front of him, Your Highness, my sister wouldn't want to see you implicate the innocent. The madam and heir of Marquis Changxin were also harmed by Yi Zhanjin. They are also my sister's patients. If you kill them, my sister will be sad. At that moment, thinking of your sadness, I couldn't do it. Chu Yihan's face was buried deep in Su Yingxue's embrace. He inhaled the unique fragrance on her body, and his heart finally calmed down a little. Su Yingxue hugged him tightly. Her heart was extremely soft. When Chu Yihan told her everything, she was still worried about one person. Your Highness, how is Ziwei? How could he stand in the fire like a fool and be burned by the raging flames without knowing to leave? Saint Ruan saved him. Chu Yihan's voice was calm, and Su Yingshi's heart finally settled down. She and Chu Yihan slept in each other's arms. Their bodies leaned against each other, emitting warmth that warmed their hearts. The night was gentle and lingering. The next day, Chu Yifeng was lazily lying on the soft couch with a satisfied look on his face when the door was kicked open. Chu Yifeng thought it was his younger brother coming to settle the score. After all, no one would dare to kick down the door of the Silver Moon Pavilion master other than Chu Yihan. Rongsheng was not such an uncultured person. However, when he saw Su Yingxue, she swung her whip at him. He immediately sat up and dodged. The pillow and armrest beside him were all shattered. His soft couch, which was worth tens of thousands of taels, was destroyed just like that. Chu Yifeng frowned. Su Yingxue, are you tired of living? Boom. What followed was a whistling sword energy. If Chu Yifeng hadn't been so skilled in martial arts and dodged quickly, he would have been smashed into pieces by the Qingfeng sword, just like his soft couch. Forget about Su Yingxue. This sword was swung by his younger brother. Chapter 809. Sweet Snuggle, we are not joking. If Wu Dao doesn't die, none of us, or even the entire world, will have a good life. Rongsheng's eyes were cold, and her face was solemn. This matters not only concerned her, who was deceived by Wu Dao, but also to Su Yingxue and Chu Yihan, who were poisoned. It also concerned this era and this world. If they all died at the hands of Wu Dao, this world would become his. Given his madness, how many disasters would the people of the world have to endure? Senior sister, how come I never knew you had such a kind heart and cared about the world? Chu Yifeng's eyes were filled with mockery. Rongsheng had always been cold and indifferent. She was unmoved by anyone's death. Back then, when he had begged her to save him like a good-for-nothing, she hadn't even spared him a glance. Now, she was displaying such righteousness. Rongsheng clenched her fists so tightly that her nails dug into her palms. She said lightly, Chu Yifeng, help us kill Wu Dao, and he'll let you do whatever you want with me. She was willing to sacrifice herself, to let Chu Yifeng do as he pleased with her. After all, she was poisoned by him and couldn't leave him for even a day. Her life no longer mattered. Chu Yifeng lifted a lock of hair by his ear and sneered. Aren't you already at my disposal? What else could she do? Rongsheng bit her lip, a touch of shame appearing on her face. Her dignity was once again trampled by him. Chu Yifeng, when everything falls apart, no one is safe. Do you think that after Wu Dao takes over the world, he won't come after you? Su Yingxue asked and frowned. Under Rongsheng's protection, Chu Yifeng had remained undiscovered by Wu Dao and had grown very powerful. But Wu Dao would eventually find out. At that time, wouldn't he kill Chu Yifeng? He would. Chu Yifeng would not escape the same fate. Chu Yifeng leaned against the railing and looked down at the living beings below the tower with contempt. Even if I have to die, I can fight him and even die with him. What does my life and death have to do with you? His words were full of disdain. He didn't want to join them to deal with Wu Dao. But you still have Sister Rongsheng. Does she have to die with you at Wu Dao's hands? Su Yingxue left the last part of the sentence unspoken. How could he be so selfish? Before she could finish her sentence, Chu Yihan stopped her. Unlike Rongsheng and Su Yingxue, Chu Yihan didn't strongly want Chu Yifeng to join them and help them. He glanced at Chu Yifeng indifferently. We're leaving now. After saying that, he took Su Yingxue downstairs. They walked out of the Silver Moon Pavilion unimpeded. On the street, Su Yingxue looked back and saw Chu Yifeng still leaning lazily on the railing. She held Chu Yihan's hand and asked curiously, Your Highness, are we leaving just like that? Was that your farewell to Chu Yifeng? Chu Yihan nodded. Yes. It's that simple? Your Highness, the way you two brothers interact is too special. It was truly surprising. Chu Yihan lifted her chin, disregarding Chu Yifeng, and with a hint of unexplainable treachery, he asked, What did you call me just now? Your Highness. Su Yingxue blurted out. After she finished speaking, she realized something was wrong. Her eyes brightened, and with a clear smile, she called out, "Hubby." Chu Yihan lowered his head and kissed her lips. "Princess Consort, come back with me." "All right, with my hubby here, am not afraid of anything." Chapter 810. No one can compare to Rong Sheng. The sight of the two cuddling figures appeared murky and obscure to Chu Yifeng's eyes. However, in just a short while, Alt Hong swiftly brought over an identical soft couch and placed it in the same spot. He also summoned several young and attractive female slaves to attend to Chu Yifeng. Beautiful women around Chu Yifeng were nothing new to Rong Sheng. As one alluring female slave attempted to feed Chu Yifeng a cup of wine, Rong Sheng abruptly seized the glass, fixing a cold stare at the female slave. "Leave." Tears welled up on the female slave's delicate face. She promptly leaned into Chu Yifeng's embrace, coquettishly pleading, "Pavilion master, she's cruel to me. I'm so scared. Please don't leave me." The female slaves groomed for Chu Yifeng were all of exceptional beauty, and many were daughters of noble families. They spared no effort to become female slaves in the Silver Moon Pavilion just to be near Chu Yifeng. Among them, some were alluring and proud. Those who could face Rong Sheng without fear or retreat were rare. Chu Yifeng raised an eyebrow, a seductive aura emanating from his features. "Senior sister, what's the meaning of this? Do you wish to serve together?" Rong Sheng remained aloof and proud, never deigning to vie with others, and particularly not for him, whom she had always disregarded. However, her response this time caught Chu Yifeng off guard. "Chu Yifeng, I will never share a man with anyone." A flicker of surprise crossed Chu Yifeng's eyes, his heart throbbing with turmoil. Yet outwardly, he remained calm. He placated the female slave with a smile, massaging her shoulder. "You may leave for now. I will visit your room later." The female slave's eyes lit up, boldly wrapped her arms around Chu Yifeng's neck for a kiss. Then, with a timid tone, she said, "They'll be waiting for you, Pavilion Master. You must come." "Of course." Chu Yifeng readily agreed, even pinching her smooth cheek. The other female slaves looked on with envy and jealousy at the one who had successfully enticed Chu Yifeng. They all thought they must emulate her to win Chu Yifeng's favor. Only then could they become his woman. Little did they know, Rong Sheng had uttered, "I don't like that woman." Sighing, Chu Yifeng ordered, "Very well then. Ahong, dispose of her." Ahong nodded. "Yes, master." As he left, he sighed with regret. The female slave from earlier thought she had won over Rong Sheng, and she strutted arrogantly in front of the other female slaves, saying, "Don't be afraid of the woman next to the pavilion master. No matter how pretty she is, she's merely regarded as a pin-up. The pavilion master prefers someone like me, full of charm. If you want to win him over, learn from me, not that lifeless princess." Walking away, her arms still swaying dramatically, she seemed particularly flamboyant. Ahong clicked his tongue. She brought this upon herself. She won't survive. Thinking she could win Chu Yifeng's favor, she would never realize that no woman in this life could win him over. He was incapable of any feelings. Chu Yifeng's heart had long been entwined with Rong Sheng's, impossible to extract. How could others even dream of it? Inside the room, Rong Sheng still held the wine glass she had snatched from the female slave. Approaching Chu Yifeng, she lifted his face and offered him the glass. Chu Yifeng grasped her hand and sniffed the wine. What poison did senior sister put in the wine? Given her vast knowledge of ancient and modern medicine, poisoning him with a glass of wine would be all too easy. Rong Sheng frowned at his words before finishing the wine in the glass. "She is a heartless person." She drank too quickly, choking in her throat, and suddenly she began to cough violently. Chu Yifeng scooped her into his arms, gently patting her back to help her catch her breath. As he patted, Rong Sheng said, "It wasn't poisoned. Just now, She simply hadn't wanted him to drink the wine that the female servant had offered. Chui Feng found it amusing. I can tell. Even if there were poison, you would still feed it to me rather than drink it yourself. Though Rongsheng was cool and detached, she always valued her life greatly. No matter how he tormented her, she never considered ending her own life. Once, she had told him, Chui Feng, you only live once, and life is not to be wasted or squandered. Since you've come into this world, even if it means suffering broken bones and leading an unremarkable existence, you must still live on properly. She spoke with such righteous conviction that he, a man who had strayed onto a wicked path, found himself without words to argue against her. That's why he always wanted to drag her down with him, to fall from grace together. However, no matter how hard he pulled, Rongsheng remained a high and lofty fairy. She never fell to the mortal world, never tainted by a breath of worldly vulgarity. I would never poison you. Rongsheng's speech was somewhat halting, as if she had never said such things before. Therefore, her expression while speaking was stiff and unfamiliar. Really? Chui Feng was quite surprised, his laughter tinged with disdain and contempt. He knew that Rongsheng was trying to lull him into complacency before killing him. After all, his body carried numerous marks from Rongsheng's previous attempts. A few years ago, had he not awoken in time, Rongsheng's golden hairpin would have pierced straight through his heart. Yes, Chui Feng, do not underestimate my feelings for you. Rongsheng looked intently at Chui Feng. As a heartless person, in order to let her feelings surface, she had to tear open the seal over her heart. Now, she was doing it herself. Chui Feng was momentarily stunned, his mind flashing back to what he had just seen. The way Chu Yihan had been protecting Suing Xue, and how she tenderly called him, hubby. It was disgustingly sweet. Rongsheng, you are a heartless person. How could you have any feelings for me? Chu Yifeng's lips curled into a mocking arc. Rongsheng took his hand and placed it over her heart. I do. Below Chu Yifeng's palm, the sound of a heart beating. Thump thump, thump thump, thump thump thump. Suing Xue and Chu Yihan awoke once more, and upon opening their eyes, they were again in the Silver Moon Pavilion. Suing Xue, looping her arm through Chu Yihan's, grumbled, hubby, your brother is seriously ill. We've only been gone half a day, and he's resorted to such tactics. Chui Feng, as the Silver Moon Pavilion master, was the king of Yungue City. To bring them back, even Suing Xue and Chu Yihan were caught off guard without a whisper of warning. This was a dining hall for use, grand enough to rival the banquet hall of the Imperial Palace, with treasures on display that even the palace might not possess. Suing Xue thought to herself, as pavilion master, Chu Yifeng truly lived more freely than as a prince. Servants, serve the dishes. Chu Yifeng entered from outside, leading Rongsheng by the hand, with a smile on his face. Seeing his smile, Suing Xue felt somewhat creeped out. Chu Yifeng, what madness has possessed you this time? What was his purpose in bringing them back here only to offer them a meal? Nothing much, just a grand scheme to deal with Wu Dao. We should at least eat our fill first, right? You and Yihan need to take care of yourselves properly, and as your brother, one naturally can't be stingy. Chu Yifeng's mouth curled upwards, his mood inexplicably buoyant. His reference to Yihan successfully disgusted Chu Yihan, prompting him to confront Chu Yifeng. Are you conspiring with Wu Dao to trap us here to death? Thwarting Wu Dao's conspiracy, if I wanted to trap you to death, would you still be alive right now? Chu Yifeng countered Chu Yihan. Chu Yihan snorted coldly. Suing Xue tugged at Rongsheng's sleeve. Sister Rongsheng, did you poison him? Otherwise, how could Chu Yifeng's attitude have made such a sudden 360-degree turn? Rongsheng shook her head. He will help us kill Wu Dao. If no poison was involved, then how did Chu Yifeng's madness get cured? Suing Xue looked at Chu Yihan, who appeared unconcerned and even pushed a bowl of ginseng bird's nest in front of her, telling her to replenish her strength properly. Seeing that Chu Yihan had accepted the situation, Su Yingxue didn't make a fuss and started eating. However, she noticed some changes seemed to have occurred between Rongsheng and Chu Yifeng. Chu Yifeng was more enthusiastic towards Rongsheng, constantly serving her food until she said she couldn't eat anymore, and even then, Chu Yifeng was still thinking about what dessert to prepare for her after dinner. As Chu Yifeng became happier, he ate more, and Rongsheng occasionally served him a few morsels of food. Then Chu Yifeng would behave like someone stricken with madness. After they finished eating, the night was dark and windy. When everyone had settled down to rest, Chu Yifeng led them to the underground information chamber. This was an underground castle with rigorously designed mechanisms on all sides. Once the stone wall dropped, it became cut off from the outside world. Apart from Chu Yifeng, who could operate the mechanisms, no one else could leave. Chu Yifeng allowed them to see it openly because each mechanism could only be activated with his blood. Even if Su Yingxue saw it, without his blood, she couldn't move any mechanism. Once inside the stone chamber, Su Yingxue gasped, "Hubby, those who are ruthless to others are even more ruthless to themselves." To open the secret chamber just once required blood, which ensured high secrecy, but the cost to oneself was considerable. If one had to open it several times a day, one would wonder if Chu Yifeng's blood would be enough. Chu Yifeng, as if having eyes on the back of his head, turned around and looked at Su Yingxue coolly. "If you hadn't married Chu Yihan, your tongue would now be for sale on the black market." His Silver Moon Pavilion black market sold everything, not just gold, silver, and jewels which were common, but also human lives, and even positions of officials, empresses, and imperial consorts were available for purchase. Su Yingxue puffed up her cheeks. Chu Yihan rubbed her head. "Don't be afraid. If he says it again, Your Highness will cut out his tongue." Su Yingxue's smile blossomed beautifully. "Hubby is the best." The idea of a husband stabbing his brother for his wife's sake shouldn't be too adorable. After a moment of levity, the group began to focus on their joint strategy. Chu Yifeng was in control of Wu Dao's whereabouts. Wu Dao has reached the vicinity of Yungue City, but he has not entered the city and has not found me yet. One speculate that there are still people he is waiting for. Who is he waiting for? Su Yingxue asked. Wu Dao had countless inscrutable schemes. Only Rongsheng, who had crossed through time, could understand and grasp them clearly. Rongsheng told them, he is waiting for the pillar of the Great Wei dynasty, the royal family member. Chu Yihan said gravely, Qin Mayan, half of the Great Wei dynasty's military power, is in his hands. Once Qin Mayan dies, Great Wei will be thrown into chaos. Just like him of the Great Qing dynasty, Han Yuan of Qi state, and Princess Bailing Rongsheng. Each one was a power and military might consolidator among the four nations. All were targets Wu Dao intended to deal with. That is to say, once Qin Mayan arrives, Wu Dao will make his move against you. Su Yingxue clenched her fist tightly. Wu Dao had used her death to strike at Chu Yihan, waging war against the Great Qing dynasty. Han Yuan, being his student, would undoubtedly submit to him. That left Chu Yihan, Qin Mayan, and Rongsheng. By killing Chu Yihan and Qin Mayan, and making Han Yuan and Rongsheng conquer Great Qi and Bailing City for him, he could then let Chu Yifeng unify the Great Wei and Great Qing dynasties. The four nations would all be under his control. A Hong led her through the market. The shops and commerce of the marketplace were no different from above ground, but upon closer inspection, one might see half a human leg hanging in a restaurant or a person being hammered to death with a large stone breaking their chest on the street, with many onlookers placing bets and cheering. There were also beggars asking for money, apparently kind-hearted people giving them coins laced with a sleeping draught, only to drag them away once they passed out. Su Yingxue pointed to a beggar being dragged away and asked Ah Hong, he has nothing on him, no possessions at all. Why would that person drug him and take him away? Ah Hong glanced at the scene. To sell him at the slave market. In the ghost market, slaves are bought and sold completely, inside and out, belonging to their masters. The master may demand their life, and they cannot die, or their heart, and they cannot give their liver. That beggar must have just escaped from somewhere, thinking he had freed himself from fate. But in reality, once he wakes up, he will be a branded slave. Accompanying little Ginseng suing Shua, smacked her lips. This encounter is somewhat pitiable, but had he not attempted to steal the money pouch because he saw that the person had wealth, he would not have met this catastrophe. There was no compassion for the suffering of humanity on her face. Althong highly appreciated this, even adoring it more. People who first enter the ghost market are all shocked. This place is another world entirely. Those wearing masks are the righteous on the surface. Yet once here, they become beings of uncertain nature. Miss Sue's observation is keen, and this calm composure is indeed rare. If it had been earlier, Su Yingxue would certainly have wanted to stand up for justice and smash this so-called ghost market. However, now she did not think that way. Every place exists for a reason, inevitably with its own purpose. Even if this is the underworld market, I surmise it has its own set of laws. Ahong smiled slightly. Indeed, the law of the ghost market is to survive based on one's own abilities. No one will save you, nor will anyone pity you. Su Yingxue uttered an "oh" and was not surprised. She could imagine that those hiding here were all extremely vicious people. But to be able to live here and keep surviving was not something everyone could achieve. After wandering around for half an hour and having strolled down one street, when Ahong asked her if she wanted to continue to the next one, she said there was no need. She wanted to go back and rest. On her way back, she passed by a medical clinic, complete with a medicine hall and doctors, which suddenly made her miss her own clinic. Although trapped here, the idea of expanding Tongcheng Medical Center all over the world still persisted in her heart. Having left the Great Cheng Dynasty for so long, I wonder how Xiao Ye's preparations are coming along. Su Yingxue muttered to herself that, should things go well, after killing Wu Dao, she was going to return and continue the unfinished business. She lived in the most prominent Zuijing building in the ghost market, a place where the people of the market dared not approach. Ahong had told her when he brought her here that only the great slave master of the market, like her, was qualified to live here. However, Zuijing building was divided into east and west sides. She lived on the east side, and the slave master lived on the west, so they would not disturb each other. Su Yingxue nodded and told Ahong that he could leave. She wanted to rest. After Althong left, Su Yingxue entered Medicine King Valley. While brewing and adjusting her own medicine, she also needed to accompany little Ginseng, who had exhausted its whiskers. Little Ginseng looked much older, and its ginseng roots had gained a couple more wrinkles. Upon seeing Su Yingxue, it let out a child's whiny voice, faithless wretch. To save you, I've again expended 1,000 years of spiritual power, and only now do you think to visit me. Heartless and ungrateful, up to no good. Su Yingxue listened quietly as it ranted, gently stroking its spiritual body with her hand. All right, it's my fault, my bad. You need to recover quickly, okay? Like a deflated child, little Ginseng bombarded Su Yingxue with a tirade and, when it became too tired to continue, stopped, its adorable voice taking on a slightly husky tone. Hey, why are you being so obedient? Usually, she would banter back, but now that she was the only target of its scolding, it made her, oh no, made the Ginseng find it boring. Su Yingxue lifted its spiritual body, revealing an intriguing smile. That's because you haven't recovered yet. Once you're better, they'll continue to pull your whiskers, okay? Damn, you're so brutal. You'll never get married like this. Seizing Wu Dao's weakness, little Ginseng trembled with fear. Su Yingxue tilted her head and smiled. Won't apologize, but am already the 9th princess consort. My lifetime commitment has been settled. You're so ruthless. You won't be able to have children in the future. My medical skills are so good. It's impossible for me not to have children. You're so ruthless, in the future. Little Ginseng deflated. realizing it had nothing left to threaten Su Yingxue with. Is there any spirit ginseng more miserable than it? To have fallen this low, it truly had no equal. Don't worry, from now on, I won't let anything unexpected happen to myself. A look of determination flashed in Su Yingxue's eyes, a mark of respect for herself. She couldn't let herself down, couldn't disappoint her mother, and most certainly couldn't fail all those in this world who cherished and loved her. Su Yingxue did not let little ginseng get the better of her in their verbal exchange, but she still kept it company for a long time, as if accompanying a petulant child. That was until she heard a noise outside the door. She left Medicine King Valley to open the door, and Rongsheng appeared at the entrance. Rongsheng had bathed before coming, and she carried a faint scent on her. If it were anyone else, they would have thought it was the fragrance of flowers, obtainable through a petal bath. But Su Yingxue could detect that it was the scent of poison. Rongsheng had been trapped in Chu Yifeng's chambers all year round, and the fragrance burnt there called must enjoy to the fullest was a type of poison. Once inside the body, one must continuously inhale it. Otherwise, after leaving it for more than 2 hours, the poison would act up in the system, and failing to inhale it for an extended period would turn one into black bones. This was the poison Chu Yifeng had administered to Rongsheng. Su Yingxue furrowed her brow and asked Rongsheng, "Sister Rongsheng, your medical skills are on par with my mother's. Haven't you thought about creating an antidote for yourself?" Rongsheng shook her head. She was a tranquil fairy, but every motion conveyed a deeper understanding to others. Su Yingxue realized, that's true. Although your medical expertise is high, you can't stay away from Chu Yifeng for too long. He's watching you, and it would be inconvenient for you to create an antidote. Compared to Rongsheng, she had it much easier. "Sister Rongsheng, let me prepare an antidote for you." Su Yingxue volunteered eagerly. Rongsheng was her mother's junior sister and had been so kind to her. She naturally wanted to rescue her. Rongsheng still shook her head. "There's no need." "Why?" Shilu the slave master, Mu Fei. She remembered that Long Shuli once said she wanted to leave behind all she had learned throughout her life. Though in this era that lacked everything, this thought was fantastical. But she was always stubborn, never admitting defeat, and surely she must have done this. So Su Yingxue must have received what she left behind. She was merely gilding the lily. Su Yingxue was very happy. "Thank you, Sister Rongsheng, for willing to share your experience with me. I will study it diligently." Rongsheng responded with a cold and indifferent hum. When she got up to see Rongsheng out, Su Yingxue noticed a red mark at the back of Rongsheng's neck, about the size of a palm, with new and old scars overlaid. She suddenly realized why Rongsheng had taken a bath when she arrived. It was probably after a fierce ordeal. Seeing the cold and ethereal Rongsheng, Su Yingxue felt a great pity in her heart, and she disliked the madman Chu Yifeng even more. Rongsheng, who was like a fairy, should have lived a free life like the fairies. Yet she was confined by Chu Yifeng. Su Yingxue stood on the upstairs balcony, lost in thought, unaware that someone opposite was watching her. As she looked up, she collided with a pair of deep eyes. The man's fair skin glowed with a fine luster under the sun, his features so beautifully transcending gender that the casual wave of his paper fan was seductive. Su Yingxue's eyes twitched, feeling very strange. She had seen many men, but she had never seen one with a face that so appealed to women. The angles of his eyes and eyebrows, even the curve of his smile, all were precisely at the angle women adored. She couldn't help but take an extra few glances before blurting out, "Who might you be, sir?" The man answered directly, "Shilu Mu Fei," in just 4 words, yet his voice was as pleasant as the music of the heavens, making one feel as if walking on clouds with its softness. Such a beautiful and gentle man. Su Yingxue thought of what Ah Hong had said, that Zuijing building Shilu was occupied by the largest slave master of the ghost market. Her eyes widened with a hint of shock. Mu Fei, this incredibly beautiful man, was the largest slave master of the ghost market? The slave master was a symbol of power and wealth in the ghost market. He was? Mu Fei observed her surprise in full, but showed no intention of crossing the boundary toward her. The two of them looked at each other from across the empty building, with Mu Fei chuckling. Miss must be new to the ghost market. The shock on your face and your unfamiliarity with me are things I haven't seen in a long time. TSK. That tone. It must be of a slave master for sure. Su Yingxue nodded and didn't intend to have any interaction with this Mu Fei. After all, she wasn't going to stay in the ghost market for long, just temporarily. However, a maidservant who suddenly appeared next to Mu Fei caught her attention. She was 13 or 14, skinny, and couldn't fill out the blue robe she wore. Even holding only a teacup in her hand, it seemed as if she was bearing something immensely heavy. Jing tried to keep the tray stable, using the gentle tone Mu Fei liked, and said softly, "Young master, please have some tea." Her obedient gentleness pleased Mu Fei greatly. He took a sip of the tea Jing had brewed. It was rich and fragrant, a flavor he liked very much. She had practiced many times and finally got it right. Mu Fei looked at her appreciatively, touched her head, and said, "Clever young girl, there's no need to stand watch tonight. Go back to your room and sleep." Really? Jing looked like she had received the best thing in the world, her bright eyes sparkling like stars. Rescuing Jing, she was permitted to stand up, and at the same time, she also saw Su Yingxue across from her. Her mouth fell open. "Sister Yingxue?" Su Yingxue gave her a slight smile but did not make any additional gestures before turning back to her own place. Mu Fei asked her with a smile, "Do you know that, miss?" Jing instinctively wanted to shake her head. "No. Think carefully before you answer." The smile vanished from Mu Fei's face, and for a moment, his eyes turned cold and bloodthirsty. Jing trembled slightly, recalling the female slaves sold to Mu Fei along with her. 8 out of 10 had died, and only she lived on, still resembling a person. She immediately corrected herself. "Her name is Su Yingxue. When we were thrown into the trial on the hill behind the land, she led us and we all walked out alive." The trial on the hill behind the land, purgatory, where out of 99 female slaves, only one could survive. How many of you lived through it? Mu Fei raised an eyebrow, curious. Jing told the truth. 99 of us, we all survived. The pavilion master rewarded all of us with money and released us. Regrettably, they were too ostracized on the surface. If it wasn't the government attempting to capture them, then it was their vicious families, dragging them to be drowned in the pond. Her parents had passed away long ago, and she could only go with a few sisters to the ghost market to make a living. But surviving in the ghost market was no easier than on the surface. All of them were sold to the slave market. Those with good luck were bought by masters. Those with bad luck were dismembered right there at the marketplace. Originally, she and 10 other sisters were chosen by Mu Fei, but they all ended up tortured to death for not serving Mu Fei well. One who remained alive was turned into a human pig, her limbs chopped off and immersed in a jar, which Jing fed daily. Although she had not died, her existence was worse than death. Upon hearing this, Mu Fei's lips curled into an extremely bewitching smile, terrifyingly beautiful. Jing dared not look up, only listening as Mu Fei ordered, "Tell me everything that happened between you all." Jing obediently complied. "Yes, master." That night, Su Yingxue could not sleep soundly. She clearly saw Jing and the other female slaves take their money and leave the Silver Moon Pavilion. They should have gone to live their own lives. So why had Jing ended up in the ghost market, again becoming a slave? This question prompted her to step out of the East Building and head towards the West Building. She had asked Hong before about the clear division between the East and West Buildings, and what would happen if she stepped into the West Building. Hong had told her, "It's the law of the ghost market. If you can come and go freely, then it's your skill, and the people of the West Building can't do anything to you." In other words, if she found herself trapped in the West Building, Chui Feng would not care about her survival. Whether she could live on depended on her alone. Su Yingxue took the red jade soft whip and went to the West Building. Having spent a long time with Ziwei, she had learned quite well the art of concealment and secrecy. She found Jing without much difficulty. But she was in a rather hidden room, the corner dark and the air permeated with a nauseating stench of decay. Jing was feeding the person in the jar and did not notice when the door had opened. Su Yingxue quietly observed from the side, and upon seeing what Jing was doing and the human pig in front of her, frowned deeply. Jing, why has it come to this? Sister Yingxue. Initially startled, Jing quickly controlled the volume of her voice to prevent Su Yingxue from being discovered. Seeing her once more, and what she whispered in the ear of the disfigured man elicited some incoherent utterances from him, which were noisy enough to be deemed normal by the guards outside, who decided not to come in and check. Jing, seeing that the patrol outside had moved on, approached Su Yingxue with wide eyes. Sister Yingxue, how did you get here? Weren't you discovered by anyone? The master Shilu was tightly secured like a web, where hundreds of slaves lived on the bottom floor. They all wanted to escape, some with considerable martial arts skills, yet none had ever succeeded. That Su Yingxue had managed to enter was truly astonishing. Su Yingxue raised an eyebrow. Though the defenses are tight, it's not impenetrable. If you don't want to stay here, then come with me to Shilu, and he'll find a way to send you to the surface to start a new life. Su Yingxue thought Jing was forced, even terrorized to the point of losing her courage, to be in such a state. However, to Su Yingxue's surprise, Jing shook her head and trembled at the mention of returning to the surface. Sister Yingxue, I won't go back. I will stay by Master's side. He treats me very well. Jing seemed to ponder for a moment before nodding firmly at Su Yingxue. Very well? Su Yingxue pointed at the urn. Not turning you into this is considered good? Upon first laying eyes on Mu Fei, she knew he was not normal. A normal man wouldn't possess such an unnaturally handsome appearance. His face was abnormal, his gaze was abnormal, and even every move he made exuded a sinister aura. No matter how she thought about it, she could not see how he could be someone that treated Jing well. Jing bit her lip firmly. Sister Yingxue, the master is truly good to me. Of all the sisters who came with me, I'm the only one alive. But the master has never troubled me. My fear of him today is because he always made me stay up all night for him. But today, after he met you, he rewarded me with a night off. Compared to being scorned on the surface, or the ever-present danger of losing my life, I'd rather stay here with my master. Su Yingxue crossed her arms, unable to change Jing's mind, and thus did not force her. Yet, being with this disfigured man felt awkward to her. After asking Jing about the events that befell her, Su Yingxue's understanding deepened to another level. It turns out that in this world, apart from the madman Chu Yifeng, there were many more lunatics. Mu Fei was one of them. Having returned to the Eastern Tower, Su Yingxue was visited by Mu Fei the next day. When Hong came to call her, he said, Mu Fei has offered 100 female slaves in exchange for a meeting with you. Su Yingxue curled her lips and scoffed coldly. So I'm worth that much? A whole 100 female slaves? Hong overlooked the sarcasm in her eyes and said with a composed smile, Our master is the overseer of the ghost market, and people there can do business with him. The master has agreed to this deal. So please, Miss Su, step this way. Huh? Su Yingxue chuckled coolly. Isn't this just Chu Yifeng trying to sell me off while my husband isn't around? Hong laughed lightly. Our master certainly cannot sell Miss Su. It's just a meeting, and it will not cause Miss Su any harm. Enough already. Su Yingxue rolled her eyes, certain that if Chu Yifeng could sell her to Mu Fei, he wouldn't hesitate for a second. That kind of man who could be jealous over a woman. What wouldn't he do? But Su Yingxue also felt curious about Mu Fei and, keeping Jing in mind, she decided to go. Mu Fei was waiting for her on the 5th floor of Shilu. There were attendants at the entrance, and the reception hall was splendid and magnificent. With the windows open, one could overlook the entire view of the ghost market. For her, Mu Fei had indeed made an effort to show hospitality. Is Su Yingxue from the Great Wei dynasty? Seeing Mu Fei again, Su Yingxue didn't show a pleasant face. After all, she didn't like to deal with abnormal people. But the look Mu Fei gave her was especially strange. At first, he was very excited, but as he calmed down, it turned into a still pool of dead water. It seemed waveless, but Su Yingxue always felt that beneath his eyes lurked turbulent waves. Yet she was sure she didn't know Mu Fei, and there was absolutely no connection between them. However, on her way there, she heard Ahang say that the owner of Shi Lu used to be a woman, a slave master with the highest status in the ghost market, who had lived in Shi Lu for 20 years, and her position had never been challenged by anyone. She had also kept quite a few male pets. Mu Fei was one of her male pets. However, Mu Fei was ruthless. He killed Hua Yi and took her place to become the largest slave master in the ghost market. This was the most sensational event in the ghost market in the past 2 years. But those living in the ghost market were no ordinary people. So this bit of gossip entertained the masses for a while and was soon forgotten. Miss Su, are you from the Great Wei dynasty? Mu Fei waved his fan, and Ah Jing, who was serving at the side, passed a cup of tea to Su Yingxue. Her eyes were bright, seemingly not at all in the ghost market, but acting as a maid in an ordinary family, exhibiting even more color than before. With her lips pursed, Su Yingxue took the teacup but did not drink, replying to Mu Fei, I come from the Great Qing dynasty. My identity, you probably bought with a female slave. You paid such a big price to see me. Are you plotting against the Great Wei dynasty, or against me? After 2 days in the ghost market, Su Yingxue had already adapted well. Although she didn't think it was a good habit, she took it as a sign of her strong adaptability. Mu Fei's mouth curled up, his red lips revealing an enchanting charm, worthy of being the 9th princess consort, with exceptional courage and insight. I won't hide it from you, Miss Su. Before coming to the ghost market, I was also from the Great Wei dynasty. The first time I saw you, I felt you looked very familiar, as if we had met before. Sorry, I've never been to the Great Wei. You must be mistaken, Su Yingxue said indifferently, but suspicion arose in her heart. Indeed, she had never been to the Great Wei, but her mother had intricate connections to it. Before she met Rongsheng, she suspected her mother was from the Great Wei. After meeting Rongsheng, he said their souls from another world had been arranged with their own identities by Wu Dao, and none of them were ordinary, so her mother was the same. But even Rongsheng didn't know her mother's identity. If she wanted to find out, she could only rely on herself to investigate. It's a pity then. The Great Wei once had a famous beauty who looked exactly like you, Miss Su. It seems I've been too homesick, and thus mistaken someone else for her, Mu Fei said with a tone containing an apology, very obligingly nodding to Su Yingxue an apology. To her, his behavior wasn't humility but seemed like a habit ingrained over many years. Mu Fei wanted to change it, but couldn't. This habit was an instinctive desire to please women. But after being discovered by Su Yingxue, a hint of annoyance quickly flashed through his eyes. Ah Jing seemed to notice too, as the atmosphere in the room turned a bit gloomy. Young master, what's wrong? Are you feeling unwell? Shut up. Mu Fei's roar was hoarse with rage, startling Ah Jing. She quickly bowed and left the room. Seeing this, Su Yingxue stood up to take her leave. If there's nothing wrong, Master Mu, I will take my leave. She didn't like Mu Fei and so didn't stay long. Loving her means possessing her? When she came out, she held Ah Jing's hand and asked her, Have you thought it over? Do you want me to save you and help you leave? Mu Fei is unpredictable and must be a harsh and ruthless person. Following him, you're bound to run into trouble. Despite having gone through the death of her parents and all sorts of vicissitudes, Ah Jing was still a girl with a pure heart. Su Yingxue couldn't bear to see her sullied by the ghost market, or to die a horrible and tortured death. Ah Jing shook her head, her clear eyes looking at Su Yingxue. Sister Yingxue, I'm fine. The young master is very good. It's just that his temper is somewhat unpredictable. I just need to leave him immediately when he gets angry, so he won't hurt me. I don't want to hurt him either. Ah Jing was not willing herself. and Su Yingxue could not force her. She patted Jing on the shoulder. "He'll leave an escape route for you. If one day you can't hold on anymore, just go find Alt Hong. He will send you back to the surface." Jing smiled gratefully at Su Yingxue. "Thank you, Sister Yingxue." "Alt Jing." Mu Fei's voice came from inside. Jing immediately responded. "Young master, am coming." After bidding farewell to Su Yingxue, she went inside. Su Yingxue stood outside the door for a long time, and not hearing any screams or the like, she finally left with peace of mind. On the way, she asked Al Hong, "Mu Fei is clearly an unpredictable person. Why wouldn't he hurt Jing? Perhaps he's taken a liking to her beauty, or it's just a novelty for the moment. Or maybe he has truly fallen for her and wants to keep her by his side." Hong analyzed with Su Yingxue. "All of these are possibilities." Su Yingxue scoffed lightly. "Mu Fei is clearly sick. How could he truly love someone?" "Miss Su, your normal thinking is correct. But who among the people in this ghost market is normal? The people and events here are unpredictable. Did Hua Yi, who adored Mu Fei for many years, not end up being killed by him? As for the female servant Jing, perhaps she will be adored by Mu Fei for many years, or perhaps, years later, she will kill Mu Fei. Everything is possible in the ghost market. After all, those living here come up with new tricks every day, endlessly. So Hong doesn't find anything odd anymore. "Oh." Su Yingxue nodded her head, not having much to say, but she had just made a promise to Jing, so she still needed to ask Hong to convey this matter to his crazy master. Hong chuckled. Doing business with the master comes at a cost. He won't agree to this condition for nothing. Would this medical book, personally written by Sister Rongshang, get his agreement? Su Yingxue raised an eyebrow. Hong's lips curled slightly. The master covets Princess Rongshang. Her handwriting would certainly make the master agree. But this book was just given to you by Princess Rongshang. Are you willing to use it for a trade like this? It seems like you don't really cherish Rongshang's sentiment, do you? Su Yingxue replied coolly. I have already memorized it all. This was not because she had to make a deal with Chu Yifeng, was it? She had already kept the contents in her head, so the handwriting of Rongshang could serve as a way out for Alt Jing. Rongshang is a fairy. She probably wouldn't mind her doing this. Hong took out a piece of white silk and wrapped the book, holding it in his hands. The master will keep an eye on this female servant for you. Su Yingxue nodded her head, and seeing Hong holding the book written by Rongshang, not daring to touch it, she couldn't help but sigh. If it's cherished so much, then why must one resort to poisoning her? To love someone, must one possess them so forcefully? The palace was lavish and majestic, but behind it laid a cliff thousands of feet high. Hidden between the mountain and the clouds, even its fresh air couldn't be graced by sunlight. Hong Lian walked through a colored fountain and into the palace, observing that everything there was incongruous with their era. Had she not served Wu Dao for so long, Hong Lian would never have known what European-style architecture was. Red walls and yellow roofs were replaced by white. The great hall ceiling hung several tens of meters high, even festooned with crystalline objects that dangled from the roof like tassels. Wu Dao said these were crystal chandeliers. But without electricity, he placed luminous pearls in the room, casting a beautiful glow Hong Lian had never seen before. However, when Wu Dao was present, the luminous pearls were covered. He couldn't be exposed to light. In the darkness, Hong Lian approached Wu Dao and knelt down. Pavilion Master, as you predicted, Chu Yihan, grief-stricken from the loss of Su Yingxue and with frequent bouts of bloodthirst, has faced repeated defeats in battle. Now he only has 20,000 troops, who have been separated from old General Su's forces, and is retreating outside Yungue City. Beheading her for public display, Wu Dao nodded, his voice hoarse and aged. How about Qin Mayan? He's in a better position than Chu Yihan. Biling can't take him down for the moment, but following your method, we poisoned his soldiers. Now half of his troops are paralyzed on the ground, unable to move. He's been forced into retreat and is now not far from Yungue City. They've all come, Wu Dao said with a hint of excitement in his raspy voice. He twirled his black leather gloved wrist, and in his right hand, he held a white box with carvings Hong Lian had never seen before, so beautiful and unfamiliar. Hong Lian had always been curious. Pavilion Master, this box is very pretty, but what exactly is inside? Whenever Wu Dao was in the hall, he consistently held this box, but it seemed light as if it contained nothing. You shouldn't ask about things that don't concern you. Wu Dao turned to Hong Lian with an implicit warning. Unable to see his eyes, Hong Lian was still affected by his dark and oppressive aura, the air around them instantly tinged with gloominess. She quickly knelt. Yes, Pavilion Master, your subordinate was presumptuous. She was about to leave when Wu Dao suddenly murmured as if talking to himself, the time has not yet come. In a few days, she will also arrive, and then this world will no longer be mine to enjoy alone. She? Hong Lian dared not ask more, but she guessed that Wu Dao was planning to summon someone else from another world, just like Long Shuli, Rong Shang, Han Yuan, and Chu Yifeng, who he had brought before. Each of them was a remarkable figure capable of dominating a nation on their own. Although Hong Lian envied and resented them, she never thought about competing with these individuals. She knew she couldn't win, but Su Yingxue was already dead. As the daughter of Long Shuli, winning against Su Yingxue was akin to beating the most formidable among them. Long Shuli, wasn't it? With this thought, she felt balanced again in her heart. 3 days later, outside Yungue City, both Chu Yihan and Qin Mayan were badly injured, driven into a corner by the troops of Han Yuan and Biling. Han Yuan, dressed in a sumptuously complex princess robe, stood at the forefront of the formation. She looked up proudly and smiled at Chu Yihan at the city gates. Your Highness, you have no escape now. As long as you agree to spend the rest of your life serving me obediently, I promise I will ask my teacher to spare your life. Chu Yihan, covered in blood, was trembling as he held the Qing Frost sword, yet even at his last breath, he did not lose his regal demeanor. His eyes emitted a cold and bloodthirsty light as he slowly spat out 3 words, "Dream on." Han Yuan angrily waved her sleeve. You still won't submit. Do I need to break your pride and make you kneel before me? She adored Chu Yihan's unyielding spirit, which is why she was willing to give him a chance to serve her, but she couldn't believe how ungrateful he was. She scoffed, Chu Yihan, even if you don't submit to me, you'll never have another woman in this lifetime. The man I like can only belong to me. Any woman that covets the man I desire has only one fate, death, just like Su Yingxue. Han Yuan laughed triumphantly. There was nothing that made her happier than knowing that Su Yingxue had died at the hands of Wu Dao. You're not worthy to mention her. With a roar of rage, a knife was thrown towards Han Yuan. Han Yuan was startled. If not for Yun Dan deflecting the knife and falling injured, she would have been split in 2 by Qin Mayan's blade. Qin Mayan, also drenched in blood, exuded an even more magnificent heroic spirit. Han Yuan, if you have the courage, face me in a duel. Even though you're a woman, I won't hesitate to behead you and display it for all to see. At the crucial moment, Su Yingxue disappeared. Qin Mayan? Han Yuan narrowed his eyes slightly, his tone carrying a hint of disdain. Are you reminiscing about your beloved Su Yingxue? Unfortunately, once she's dead, she's dead. Her body has already been picked clean by the fish. You couldn't have her in life, and even less in death. Han Yuan's gaze turned vicious. Kill him. Any man who fancied Su Yingxue should die. They are as loathsome as that wretched woman. Behind her, 10,000 troops moved in unison. They thought they could kill Qin Mayan and capture Chu Yihan alive, but with the gates of Yungue City flung wide open, not only did it provide Chu Yihan and Qin Mayan with a route of retreat, but it also trapped her between 2 fires, leaving her like a turtle caught in a jar. Atop the city tower of Yungue City, Chu Yifeng approached in a purple robe billowing in the wind. When the breeze lifted, his languid and sensual form was exposed to onlookers' eyes. The corner of his mouth curved into a sexy arc. Is such a woman even worthy of Pavilion Master's brother attending to her? Ridiculous. Ah Hong stood beside Chu Yifeng and said indifferently, some people, once lifted too high, do indeed seem to lose their sight. Take Han Yuan, for instance, who, having arrived from another time and lived in luxury for so many years, no longer understood that she was merely a pawn, wielding Wu Dao's power and strutting around arrogantly. Where is Yingxue? The exact location of Wu Dao's lair. Chu Yihan stepped forward with the Qingfeng sword, urging Chu Yifeng on. His temperament was such that once he struck an enemy, he aimed for a lethal blow to prevent future problems, and he would never give his foes a chance to catch their breath. Now was the perfect time to eliminate Han Yuan and kill Wu Dao. At the mention of Su Yingxue by Chu Yihan, Qin Mayan was both startled and overjoyed. She's really not dead? Quickly, take your highness to see her. One must see her safe and sound. Chu Yifeng raised an eyebrow, directing their gaze towards the rear. One of his subordinates knelt before him to report, Master, Miss Su is not in the ghost market. We were unable to find her. Have you checked Shilu? Alt Hong's brows furrowed slightly. Not being able to find Su Yingxue at such a critical moment was no trivial matter. We checked, but Miss Su was not there. Miss Su's room was orderly. She must have left on her own accord. Left on her own? Then it has nothing to do with Pavilion Master. Chu Yifeng spread his hands towards Chu Yihan, signaling that it wasn't his negligence in taking care of your wife. She left on her own. Where would she go? Qin Mayan was a bit worried. Chu Yihan frowned slightly. She would never disregard the bigger picture. If she had disappeared, there must be a reason for it. Chu Yifeng brushed back a stray hair beside his ear, his sensual thin lips parting slightly. Where Su Yingxue has gone is not of utmost importance right now. What's crucial is, if you wish to deal with Wu Dao, once you miss this village, there'll be no more shops to visit. The expressions on both Qin Mayan and Chu Yihan's faces grew more solemn. They both knew that the primary purpose of their journey was to eradicate Wu Dao. He was a cancer. If left to grow unchecked, the 4 kingdoms and 9 provinces would become his domain, and all the people would turn into his slaves. Deploy the troops. Chu Yihan's lips barely moved as he issued the cold command. Behind him, Su Hao, clad in battle armor, relayed the order. Deploy the troops. Qin Mayan also got his troops ready, planning to strike a fatal blow to Wu Dao. Before Chu Yihan and Qin Mayan left the city, they ordered Mo Qi, find her, and ensure her safety at all costs. Defeating Wu Dao was certainly important, but if anything happened to Su Yingxue, nothing else mattered. Mo Qi knelt, his voice resolute. Yes, one will protect the princess thoroughly. Han Yuan's defeat and escape. Upon witnessing the siege of Chu Yihan and Qin Mayan's formidable armies, Han Yuan immediately ordered the Qi state troops to resist, gritting her teeth in hatred. Why do they still have soldiers and horses? Haven't they already been defeated? Chu Yihan has been so badly injured. He's already hidden away in Yungue City. How could he still lead troops? Princess, please stay calm and cautious. Let's first retreat a bit to avoid getting hurt by these people. As for the 9th prince, perhaps someone in Yungue City has saved him. I just saw that the person leading the troops is Su Hao, not the 9th prince, Yun Dan advised in a low voice, standing beside Han Yuan. Her mind was intricate, but she also pondered some perplexing points. For instance, why the army that just now seemed like a defeated rabble suddenly became as fierce as a legion of tigers and wolves. Su Hao, Su Yingxue's brother, pass my command. Bring me his head. One will grant 10,000 gold and a marquisate to the one who accomplishes this. A trace of bloodlust flashed in Han Yuan's eyes. She wanted not just Su Yingxue's death, but also for all those who loved her to accompany her to hell. They don't deserve to live in this world with her. Yun Dan conveyed her order, but almost failed to make it back to her side. Having been struck by an arrow in the back, She gasped for air as she ran to Han Yuan, her mouth full of blood. "Princess, hurry! There's an ambush. Qin Mayan isn't injured at all, and Su Hao's army is majestic, not resembling one that has lost a battle. Their numbers are increasing. How can this be? Where are Bailing's troops? Is Rongsheng dead? Why doesn't he come out and command his troops?" Han Yuan stood atop the carriage, shouting arrogantly. An arrow from Su Hao whistled through the air, scattering her hair and pulling her down from the carriage by tangling in her tresses. "Ah!" Han Yuan screamed in terror. Had Yun Dan not acted swiftly and cut her hair in time, Han Yuan would have been smashed to death. With Yun Dan cushioning Han Yuan's fall and seriously injured, she still urged, "Princess, run quickly." Han Yuan quickly stood up, forgoing her princess image, and fled immediately towards the palace at the top of Wudao Mountain. "Follow her." Qin Mayan commanded his troops to pursue Han Yuan. Meanwhile, Su Hao followed Chu Yahan's military orders, cutting off Han Yuan's troops at the base of the mountain, causing her to flee in disarray, isolated and without support. As Han Yuan fled towards the mountain, she ran into Chu Yifeng midway. Seeing him as if he were a savior, she flung herself at him. "Senior brother." Chu Yifeng raised an eyebrow, his alluring eyes filled with a roguish charm. "Isn't this my junior sister? Get up quickly." "Why such a sorry state? You are a princess of a nation. This is unbecoming of your image." Chu Yifeng pretended to be accommodating, and Han Yuan saw no flaw in his act. She even thought that inside Chu Yifeng's body was a soul like hers that had transmigrated and said, "Senior brother, don't you find it strange? Clearly, you pretended to save Chu Yihan earlier, striking at him to inflict more injuries. Yet now, he can still lead troops, and Su Hao and Qin Mayan have been relentlessly pursuing me. I had no choice but to escape to find our teacher." If she didn't turn to Wu Dao, she was certain to be dismembered by Qin Mayan's horses. Didn't Chu Yihan fail to show up? He should have died in the city. Now, you go to the teacher in peace. Come, let your senior brother help you. Chu Yifeng kindly helped Han Yuan up. Han Yuan had no guard up against him. However, while walking on the mountain path, she casually spoke to Chu Yifeng, "Senior brother, do you still remember the way to our teacher's place?" "I don't recall it very well." You're tuning in to the Romance Rendezvous YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.